Hi, everybody. Welcome to a branch of Laurels. I'm a Shaxi from Ontier, and tonight my guest is Sir Donngal from Atenveldt. He's a member of the Order of the Laurel, Pelican, Chivalry, and a Lion of Atenveldt. And he runs Acer Metalworks. So we're going to talk about his journey in the SCA and his passion for making stuff out of metal. So welcome. Thank you for doing this.
No problem. Hi, everybody.
So can you start us off with your origin story, your SCA origin story?
Like how I first got into the SCA?
Yeah, how did you find the SCA and what kept you here?
So back in 1997, so the end of 1997, I was managing a pizza restaurant, and I had a friend of mine, oddly enough, whose name is Merlin. That was his birth name, Merlin Arthur. His brother's name is Morgan, and his parents were very much into Arthurian legend and stuff. So he had, one day he'd come into work like around, Christmas time in December, and was like, dude, I forgot to tell you, like, we got to go to this medieval party out in the desert in February, like around Valentine's Day. And I was like, okay, like, what's going on? And he was just like, dude, it's like going to the Renaissance Festival, but we get to dress up and camp out and like drink beers and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And me and my wife were getting married in 1998. We had our wedding was going to be on Halloween in 1998, and we were having a medieval Renaissance wedding. So, we were both already into that. And so I was like, oh, this would be awesome. So like, I didn't know anybody else, so I went, set up like a little mundane tent, and like Merlin was there, and he introduced me to everybody in the camp. Schadenfreude, which supposed to be Schadenfreude, but we call it Schadenfreude because we don't do anything correct. And so I kind of met a bunch of these guys, and like I got there on a Friday, after work, and we set up this little dome tent, and he had a dome tent. Most of the people in camp had dome tents. Actually, yeah, no, there wasn't a single period tent in camp. It was kind of funny. And like that night, we had a fire pit, and there was drumming and dancing. And I remember Angie sitting there, and like someone handed her a drum, and they were teaching her how to play stuff on the drum. And like I was meeting all these people. It was actually kind of really overwhelming. And then like the next morning, and then it rained, of course. And then like the next morning, I got up and I heard like these big like kettle drum sounds and all this drumming, and I was like going to the bathroom, and I was like, what is this? And so I followed the drumming and got to this battlefield, and I was at Estrella War, Estrella 13 or Estrella 14. It was in 1998. So I got to the battlefield, and like everybody's covered in mud, and they'd already done like a couple of battles, and I saw these people in armor, and like I was like, what the hell? And because no one told me about this, they just said we were going to a medieval party, like we were going to be D&D characters, like LARPing, I guess, which I had never done before either. And so I watched like a couple of battles, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I went back to camp, and there were some people in camp that had gotten up, and they're like putting some armor on. So I walked up to them and was like, you guys gonna go fight? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I woke Angie up. I was like, you got to come watch this. You're not going to believe this shit. This is crazy, And so we watched them fighting, and then we went shopping and stuff like that through the marketplace. And it was just like so overwhelming, right? And like we were just like definitely like new people, and like just walking around, like people actually just kind of came up to us and were like, oh, hey, is this your first event? Like we're in the merchant area, and we're just like, yeah, and everyone was so nice. And then like, we cooked food, we had dinner, and then that night we had like this crazy cloven fruit party. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. There was like belly dancers everywhere. I remember walking out of camp, and like I went to this camp, and they had this big bardic circle going on, and like these big pipe like torch things that were lit up. And I sat down, and like they just were like, they gave me a chair, and I listened to like this bardic tale. And I remember the guy was telling this story, and he had like all this like long, like gray white hair and this big white beard, and like had like a fighting tabard on with some heraldry on it. And it was incredible, And I woke up Sunday morning, and me and my wife had to go to work on Monday, so we helped out with some stuff at camp. We talked and socialized, got to meet the people in camp a little bit more, and helped clean up some stuff, and then we had to pack up and go. But then, before I left, I gotten some phone numbers and some information about like the Wednesday night fighter practice that we had in Atenveldt, and so I kind of let it sit for a couple of weeks because at the same time I also owned a pizza restaurant. So like I'm getting married, we're having a massively retardedly huge wedding in Maryland, and I own a restaurant which is also like having another wife, and I have to take care of these employees and all this stuff. So a couple of weeks went by. It was kind of weird. Like I kind of felt like I was on a date, like I was playing it cool before I contacted anybody. It was so hard, and I was so excited. And so I went out to like the Wednesday night fighter practice, and like literally the first thing that happened, I got there in downtown Phoenix, huge fighter practice. I mean, there was like probably 100 people fighting in the melee at practice, and there's all these merchants out there. And someone walked up and handed me a piece of paper, and I opened it, and it said, "You've been poisoned." And I was like, "What is this? Like, what does this mean? I've been poisoned." And so Kyle, who was the head of Schadenfreude, he saw me and he's like, "Hey," he waved, and I was like, "Kyle, like, what is this?" He goes, "Those are the children of the night." And I was like, "What does that mean?" The Shanai fighters that are over there, like they play these games. And so like I talked to him, he explained to me some SCA stuff and like kind of how things go, and like when they have house meetings and when they get together, and found out that we all kind of lived like within most of the people I met, including him, like we all live within a couple of miles of each other. Meanwhile, I'm telling Todd and Matt all about this stuff at D&D games. I'm like, you guys, like, you're gonna freak out. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, we're changing everything. We're gonna stop what we're doing and we're gonna go do this medieval stuff. Like, and so as the summer went on, I introduced Todd and Matt to these guys, and a couple other people from the gaming group, and like it got so crazy and so intense so fast that our wedding plans kind of changed. And Kyle, who's the head of the household, is now going to fly to Maryland and marry us. He's going to be like the dude that does the ceremony. A bunch of the guys in the household are now like going to be in my wedding party. So like my wedding party went from like 3 or 4 people. I think I had like 12. Like, so because Angie had like 2 maids of honor, and like, I mean, it was just crazy. So I had to catch up with her anyway, I guess, to balance it out. So, but yeah, it was just crazy. And like, we got married on Halloween. 2 days later, we went on our honeymoon, and we got back from our honeymoon, literally got back from the airport, unpacked our stuff, and packed the car up, and we went to Barron's War, which was like the first event they had at Schnepp Farms in Queen Creek in 1999. And because I'm mental, I showed up with a Viking A-frame tent that I had built earlier that, like in September. I made the frame. I had no clue what I was doing. I just made this frame out of some lumber and some pipes, and I drooped all this canvas over it, and I stapled all the canvas together, like for the seam, because I didn't know that you could use pens, right? And I cut out these triangles, and I made these doors, and I stapled all this stuff together. And then when Angie was at work, I ran it through her sewing machine, and went back and pulled out all the needles, and then her sewing machine had to go in and get retuned because you can't run like 4 layers of canvas. And I put a plastic tarp on the bottom, so like 4 layers of canvas, a plastic tarp, and an aluminum grommet at one point like went through the sewing machine. But I showed up to like my second SCA event in this household that no one had a period tent, and I put up a period tent, and they were just like, "What the hell? Like, this is crazy." And so it just kind of went from there. And originally my thought process was, because I have bad shoulders, like from a birth defect, like my shoulders pop out of socket really easily. I was like, I'm gonna do like rapier fighting because like I can't even throw a ball, and I was like, what, maybe 200 pounds if I was lucky. I was probably 190 pounds at the time. And then Angie was like, I can't fight anyway until we get insurance, because I was, I'm accident prone from skateboarding and stuff. And so, yeah, just kind of, that's how it kind of started. And then She didn't let me start fighting until 2000. I was started to get armor together, and so I started fighting a little bit then, and I fought my first Australia War in 2001. And but in the whole meantime, like, you know, I joined this household of these people that were really kind of fringy in the SCA, you know, and had great. I mean, these clover and fruit parties were intense. Like, if you were a single person, it was definitely the place to be. It was weird because I'd always have to be like, oh, I can't take your fruit, because they're always giving me like fruit, like bananas or oranges with cloves in them, and you're supposed to bite them and play all these kissing games and stuff. And like, you know, that wasn't gonna happen. But so like I would do gate duty or whatever, but it was just crazy intense. And so in the meantime, like, I'm getting into the armoring, or not the armoring, but the fighting idea of it, and the fact that you can't go to Walmart and buy armor at the time. And I didn't have a computer, you know, and so I was like trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And so I made like a leather thing and used my driver's license as a pattern to cut out aluminum plates, and was watching Braveheart and like all this stuff. And pretty much the household, we all wore kilts at the time, so that made it easy to pack your garb up because you just had one little container. But I just, you know, started getting all these people in the household like super duper excited. And next thing you know, like, people start having more period tents. Like, we start getting camp a little bit better, you know. I mean, and we were getting, you know, there was a lot of hard times in that household. Like, I mean, Atenveldt wasn't the kindest to us by any, so that's why we ended up losing people often. But you know, because we were mercenaries, and so like we would mercenary out for firewood, you know, hey, and then we would have like this crazy party. We would invite everybody to it, you know. But like that's when I decided, like, as I was fighting, I was like, you know, maybe if I try to become a knight, I can, one, give some credibility to the household, and then maybe I can give a voice to the household inside the kingdom. Because like like it just didn't matter. It was like we could have been the most perfect angels, and if something bad happened or at an event and we were there, it was our fault.
Mm.
You know, and there were things that we did, you know, like, you know, like I remember, like, it was so funny. We were at a patrol war, and we were having a games with another household where we would like kind of prank each other. So we woke up one morning and there was a toilet in the middle of camp and a bunch of fake poop.
Like
And
a
like,
ceramic toilet?
yeah, like from home, right? Like we wake up Sunday morning after this big clover and fruit belly dancing party, and there's a ceramic toilet in the middle of camp with all this fake poop. I still have some of the fake poop because you never know when you need it. And like one of the poops had a post-it on it, said, "Here's a pile for Lord Kyle," you know, and stuff. And we, you know, what do? You have a toilet in camp. So I looked at Merrick and said, "Dude, do you have shorts on under your tunic?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "All right." So I went into my tent. I got out these New Times, which is like a, you know, like a local publication newspaper thing that we used to light fires with. So I gave him one of those, and we put the toilet in a wagon. And I was like, "Matt, just pull your like, take your shorts off, get some boxers on, and put them around your ankles or something, or like do something so it looks like your underwear around your ankle. You sit on the toilet, and we're gonna pull it through sight." And so there was a merchant named Tamlin who made Tamlin's Scottish food. It was his camp that put the toilet there. So we pulled it through the merchant area at Potrero War, and Matt's on the toilet, just going, "Eat at Tamlin's, eat at Tamlin's." And then, you know, the king of Atenveldt was in Merchant Row eating, and like saw it and was like, "Oh geez, you know, those are my guys. Like, those are for Atenveldters doing that, you know." And you know, we get home and like we would get flack for it on the battlefield and stuff like that. And so
And
you
nobody
know,
stepped forward to kind of pull you under their wing and
no, right. So like I squired Viscount Sir Sterling, and like within a couple of months he moved to the Outlands. So I didn't know what to do. I kind of just floated around for a little bit, and then you know, we showed up to a patrol war again because we loved going to these out of kingdom events, because like Kaid, like they loved us. Like we would show up to an event, and my wife, we'd go to Great Western War, and my wife would run the headquarters the whole entire week. Like if they needed a volunteer, her and Matt's girlfriend would be in there, and they would get like 40 volunteer hours. You know, if they needed someone to help do something, they could come to our camp, and we always did it. You know, and so and then we would have like these huge parties with like 8 fire pits, and we would go to Great Western War and burn 4 cords of wood in 2 days. You know, it was crazy. And but like a Patrol War one time, we showed up with about 35 fighters, and Matthias, who's no longer with us, you know, he moved to the west, right? So he was king, and he showed up, and we had like 35 fighters that year. And on Saturday, we had already had a contract for firewood, so we were fighting against Atenveldt, and it was really bad. I mean, I remember seeing Kyle on the ground and like getting kicked, like while he was dead, like knights from Atenveldt, you know, are doing this stuff, and like it was just stupid. And Matthias saw it, and Sir Johannes from Windrose Armory saw it. And at the time, I was going to Windrose and learning how to build armor. And Matthias came over and was like, "Hey, can we get you guys to fight with us tomorrow?" Like, we talked to our employers, and they were cool with it. And then had Johannes like be the knight with our group on the field, and like, I mean, we just destroyed everything. You know, there's 35 crazy people running around swinging sticks. Like, it just gets messy, right? And fun. And so Matthias was really instrumental in like kind of giving us a little bit more credibility, I guess.
Legitimizing you.
Legitimizing, you know. And then like I was able to convince Craven when he was crowned to give Kyle a court barony, you know, because I was like, dude, this guy. We show up to an event and we have 100 people camping with us. We field 40 people at a stray war, and all of you guys come to our parties and then complain about us later, you know, and like and talk crap. And so Craven, I made the court barony, and Craven came and hung out in camp during like a non-party time to kind of see how things were. And he was in camp, I think maybe 5 minutes, and he just looked at me and goes, "Get it done. It's happening. Just get him to the event." And so, you know, and that was like things that I thought that needed to be done. Like with, you know, these people that have been in the SCA for 15 years before I got there. Like I was the first person in the household to get an AOA, like my first year and a half in the SCA. Yeah. But you got people that are doing all this stuff, you know? So that's kind of why I decided that maybe I should be a peer if I can figure it out, you know?
To get other people on board too.
To kind of inspire other people in the camp to not get disillusioned, and to have a voice for those people that, you know, because not everybody wants that. Some people just want to show up and party, right? And that's fine too, you know. Yeah. And so, but they don't need to be picked on, you know. And so that's kind of why I ended up doing that. And then, you know, at the same time, like during all that time was going on, Johannes had seen me out at fighter practice one time in Barony of Atenveldt, and was like, we talked a little bit, and then I remember I went to a Great Western War, and I'd saved up all this money. At this point, I don't have my pizza restaurant anymore, so I saved up some cash, and I was like, I want to buy this $700 helmet, and he like wouldn't take my money. And I was like, this guy's crazy. You want to take $700? And he's like, just come down to the shop and build a helmet. And I was like, what? And he's like, I saw that you made that coat of plates and a couple other things. He's like, come down to the shop and see if you can build a helmet. And I was like I was just dumbfounded. And it was my a different Matt was with me at the time, and I remember we got home and Matt was like, "Dude, did you go over to Johannes?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm not gonna go over to his shop." Like that was just, he's just saying that, you know. And so Matt like pretty much drugged me down to Johannes' shop in downtown Phoenix, and he was like, "Oh, hey," you know, and we chatted, and he like showed me some stuff, and you know, asked me if I knew how to use some tools, and you know, I was pretty handy. And so then like I went down and like built my, like I was like, I want this lobster pot style helmet that I wanted to buy. I want something like that, but if I'm gonna build it, can I like do some extra decorations and stuff on it? And he's like, yeah. So I built this helmet that was too big, it didn't really fit me, but it was the first helmet. I wish I had it. It got confiscated in 2005 by the Phoenix Police Department because it was evidence in a double homicide. Uh,
Yikes.
yeah, which is interesting, right? So, but yeah, so I was building a relationship with Johannes, and that's also where I met Tiernan, Charlie Amaral, and we became pretty good friends. And so at the time, I was still kind of like fluttering about as a squire with no knight, and like Sterling, who was my knight, I didn't know when I squired to him, but he was like the first and only knight that would talk to me, really. Him and then Duke Man, but Duke Man was so intimidating. And then Sterling asked me if I would be a squire, and so then I found out how much everybody in the kingdom didn't like him. And I mean, literally, like picked like the most hated guy in the kingdom. I mean, had a spider card pulled and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was just like a lot of bad stuff. So, but I always respected him. I mean, we're still friends, so then Charlie adopted me after Tiernan adopted me after he got knighted, and then I think I got offered. That was like in 2004, and then I got offered at the end of 2005 at Great Western War, where some of the interesting homicide stuff happened. So, like I don't know what's up with Great Western War and people going there after they've killed somebody or allegedly killed somebody,
Wow.
but it happens. So, and that was the event that I got offered at by Duke Edward from Triscothere, and then but Duke Aaron Gray was crown prince, and so apparently they had made arrangements so that Edward offered me, but Aaron was going to do the ceremony at his coronation later that year. And
And had you been going to practice regularly before you got knighted?
like, so it was so crazy. I was going to practice, like, so I mean, you think about it. So I started fighting in 2001. I got squired in 2000 at the end of 2001, something like that. Man, I started fighting like around the end of 2000, and then got squired in 2001 or something like that. And then Sterling left, so I didn't really go fight really that much for a while. And then in 2002, I started going to practice like twice a week. Like I didn't know that I lived in a barony called Twin Moons. Like I just thought there was the barony of Atenveldt. So I found out there was a fighter practice 5 minutes from my house. So on a Thursday, so I would go to Wednesday night practice and I would fight like mostly kind of melees and stuff, and then I would go to Thursday night practice and then I would try and learn how to do singles. And like I got so competitive, and like I got my buddy Todd to go, and we were competitive with each other in a really really good way. But then like I would just get so pissed off because there was, I hate saying it, but the members of the populace at the time were very mean in Twin Moons, but they were even meaner in the Baron of Atenveldt, like because we were in Schadenfreude, right? And so I had to fight my way to get respect from those people. So I was fighting all the time, and we were doing Pell practices all the time on our own. And then, like when Charlie adopted me, there wasn't a whole lot of like, it was just practicing. It was going to practice. So at that point, I was going to practice 3 times a week. And, and the cool thing is like, before I got squired, I remember having a conversation. We were sitting in bed, and I talked to Angie about it. And I was like, hey, like, I want to talk to you about, I'm thinking about doing this thing called being a squire so I can become a knight and do this stuff for the household. And we had a really good discussion about it because I needed her to be on board with it because I knew it was going to take up some time.
Right.
And I just didn't want to, I just wanted her to be a part of that, And so she was cool with it. And yeah, I was practicing a lot. And then the weird thing was in 2000, this happens to a lot of fighters, right? So in 2005, after that Australia, there were some guys that had gotten knighted that like I saw published like on the Armor Archive, like Craven would do a thing on there like, yeah, these are the top 5 fighters in our kingdom. And I'd be like, why am I number 5? Like I beat that person up. Like Charlie's wife is above me. And like I would go to fighter practice and be like, you and you. And I would just be like, hey guys, I just beat those people up. Because not knowing that it needed to be more than just that, right?
Right.
And so I got kind of disgruntled. And my wife is a travel agent. And we had put off doing a lot of things for me to do SCA stuff. So like, in 2004, I didn't know that you could drive down to Rocky Point, Mexico, which is 3 hours from my house, and go to one of the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to, and go fishing, and it's dirt cheap. So we were starting to do more things like that, and then she gets 9 weeks paid vacation a year. So like we didn't want to use all that on SCA stuff because she was getting like, like I would go to an SCA event and she would go to like South America, and I'd be like, I want to do something, and so we started trying to budget our time a little differently. And then I've been wanting to get this octopus tattooed on my arm. So I basically was like, yeah, I'm not going to go to fighter practice that much because I need a break. Like I was getting mentally, I was letting these other people get recognized for things that I didn't know the whole story behind, and I was letting it get to me. So I just needed to step away from it a little bit. And then, then they offer you knighthood, right? Like just when you're like, screw you guys, I don't care and stuff. So yeah, and it was just crazy. And then
were you able to talk to Tiernan about some of your feelings, like your anger, and work through some
we
of that?
talk about it all the time. And like there would be stuff like I would go to practice, and like him and another guy, Sir Roger, like one night would be like, hey, so we need you to do some stuff at practice. So when you fight some of the other knights and your name comes up in the circle, they'll be like, who? They'll be like, Donngal, like who? The guy. And then they'll be like, oh, they'll rub their leg and be like, oh, Donngal, that's right. And I was like, are you serious? Like, and they're like, yeah, you got to get better at these leg shots. So like, I was like, I took it to heart. I would go home and practice leg shots in every variation, and then go to practice and not throw anything at anybody like for half of the night other than leg shots. And if you were blocking them, I would be like, challenge accepted. I'm going to hit you in the leg, and you're going to take this, and it's going to be like no questions asked. And because at the same time, there was a lot of people that were having problems with me not hitting hard enough sometimes. So I was watching a lot of like lightweight MMA fighters because I was a small guy, lightweight guy. And I was watching lightweight MMA fighters, and I was watching how they use their body and their body mechanics and footwork. And they were landing every shot with a step and with forward momentum. So I was doing all this stuff, and like I got this huge reputation for like blasting, just blowing people's legs up to the point where like, I remember Duke Arthur O'Flaherty down here telling me, he's like, dude, you're hitting us so hard in the leg, like we can't even acknowledge it for like 10 minutes. And like I feel bad. Like after fighter practice, I go home and I'm like, oh my God, I just blew off all these shots from Dave. And and everybody calls it like the armoring dishing shot. And I don't know if it really has anything to do with that. I think
it's more MMA body mechanics stuff.
It was just body mechanics, right? I mean, I was swinging a 7-pound hammer, like rawhide mallet to dish stuff, but I don't know, maybe I wasn't putting the step in with it. So, maybe it just gave me the stamina to be able to continue, because I would have to swing that hammer like 1,000 times,
Well, swinging the hammer plus fighting, that's a lot of shoulder work.
Oh, it's so strange. Like I remember, like I would brush my teeth and I'd be like, oh my God, my right forearm is like way too big. And I started having some weird muscle problems on my back, right? So I had to go see a therapist to tell me that I needed to do stuff with this arm, like to build up the back muscles that were kind of lopsided. But so we used to talk about it, and like there was just certain things like, he would be like, just keep fighting, dude. Like, just, because I was doing all this volunteer stuff. I would like go to events and like wash the dishes, which I gotta be honest with you, like that was probably some of the coolest stuff, was going to a non-fighting event, like serving the royal table, which our kingdom has kind of gotten away from having a feast like that. Like being in the back and helping, they always would let me help cook stuff because I had been managing restaurants since I was 17 years old. And then like doing like dishes. I met some people and had in ways that I might not have ever met before, being, because some people are just super duper shy all the time. And so they like to be behind the scenes and do this stuff. So, I was the baronial knight marshal of Twin Moons. I think I have the record for like the longest time holding that office probably. But, I was doing all this other stuff outside of just fighting all the time, and so,
well, let's step back a little bit to you working in Johannes's shop.
Yeah.
So you made your own helmet, and then did you just fall in love with it, or how did you progress?
It was super duper awesome. Like, so the funny thing is when I was a kid living in Maine, I wanted to build ships. So then I lived in Brunswick, Maine, but the next town over was called Bath, Maine, and there was a company called Bath Iron Works, and they built like Coast Guard ships and battleships, like and destroyers. Like we would drive by there, and I would like, you drive by like one day, and you'd see like kind of a frame, and then like 6 months later, like that frame has got a whole thing on it, and it's sitting in the water, and now they're doing this other stuff. And like I remember I was like 14, 15 years old. I told my dad I want to go to Votech school. I want to be a metal worker. I want to learn welding. And he's like, no, only idiots do that. Like you're gonna go to college. And I was like, okay. Like, and then I didn't go to college. But I started when I was 17. I started managing a pizza restaurant, and then that's how I got into I was actually managing 3 pizza restaurants. By the time I was 18, I was running like a chain of them. But that's how I got into the food industry. But so I always kind of had like this little like kind of passion like in the back of wanting to do metal work. I guess like I always had an interest in it. I just didn't know anything about it. So when I went in and when Johannes took me under his wing, I was definitely like a clean slate. Like there had been people that had come in before that maybe had tried to work with like Casca or like just tried to do stuff in someone else's tutelage, and everything that he saw that I had done, like I was like, oh, I need to make some shoulder armor. And I remember him being like, how'd you dish that shoulder armor out? And I was like, I went to the thrift store, I bought a bowling ball, and I just cut out a piece of metal of aluminum, and then I took a hammer and I beat it over the top of the bowling ball and tried to shape it around the bowling ball. And he was like, oh, okay. And then I get to a shop and he's like, we have these metal dishes and we hammer the stuff down inside of it and it shapes. And I was like, oh my God, like, why was I doing it the hard way? Which is actually like the better way. I mean, the more historical way would be to raise it over a ball like that. The way that I was trying to teach myself. And so he was a really good teacher. He was, I'd like to think that he was super duper patient with me. I know there was definitely some antics and I definitely screwed up plenty of things. I mean, I know at one point I was screwing up so much stuff that he kind of had a rule. He was like, you can use the shop materials, you can use the metal, but if you're gonna like, make something for yourself, like make a few extra, or and stuff like that, or come in and help me work like before an event and put inventory together, which was good because you got to learn how to do things that maybe I wasn't so much interested in, but I would just do it and so like, but there were times where I would like trash so much metal, like I would go to the store and just buy a bunch of metal and bring it in. I'd be like, dude, I trashed like a 4-foot, here's a piece of metal, and he'd be like, oh, don't you? Like, I don't know, I feel bad, like I shouldn't be, messing stuff up like that, like I just looked at it as if this was my shop, how would I feel if someone came in and like totally screwed up like, a $25 piece of metal, and
That's cool. You
so
learned kind of the process of production line stuff too,
yeah,
because that's so different than doing art pieces.
It is like when you're like, it's definitely different. And I learned that I actually honed that skill at Windrose. So like, I mean, I was managing a steak delivery restaurant, which is totally weird. It was an awesome idea to deliver steak dinners. But like I would set my schedule up to where like I would work a double shift on like Monday and like Tuesday. And that way I could work on like, a different day. Like Thursday I could work in like Wednesday and Thursday I would work until noon. And then I would leave, cook up some lunch, go to Johannes' shop, work with him until he was ready to go home like around 6, and then I could go home, shower, because you have to shower before you go to fighter practice, because otherwise all the metal sweat gets in your eyes. I got rust in my eyes and stuff before. And then I could go to fighter practice, right, on both those days. And so it would work out really, really well. And then like, my days off, my only day off would be Saturday usually. So on Saturday, like I could be like, hey, Johannes, are you going to be at the shop? Can I come down? And like if he was there, I would go down and like, he would like just, hey, what do you want to do? What's on your mind? Or if I saw something in his shop that he was working on, I'd be like, how'd you do that? And that's also where I met Sir Miklos, John Pliska. Miklash I met there. And so like there would be times where Johannes would leave, but Pliska would be there. And then he'd be like, oh, I'm going to work until 10 o'clock tonight. So I'd like um, contact Angie and be like, hey, I'm going to stay in downtown Phoenix at the shop with Pliska. You know, she'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And he would teach me like, you know, some brass because Pliska was doing like a lot of brass on stuff. And so, and then he was also interested in like the Polish Hussar armor that I was interested in. And so he's like, yeah, check out this book I got. And then, and just things would go like that. And I would come in and be like, hey, you know, Johannes, this is something I did last night with Pliska. Like sometimes I would do something super duper cool that at least I thought was cool, you know, and I would leave it sitting there so he could see it when he'd come in the morning. And then like sometimes he'd be like, could you put your shit away, you know? Stuff like that. And then you know, and then you know, Charlie ended up getting a job there, was working there for a while. So then like that's how we kind of got to know each other really well. And his wife at the time and my wife became really good friends. And actually those two girls they're still really good friends. And like, you know, and me and Charlie would be like, you know, he would come in and work on his own projects, and we would kind of play off each other. And like, you know, I'd watch Charlie make this Viking stuff, and I was like, dude, I don't understand how you're making that Viking stuff. Like, I don't know if it's just too simple, or like for me, I was getting a book from a museum and being like, I want to try and make this thing, and then Charlie would be like, I got an Osprey book, I want to make a Viking helmet, and he would draw up something and then like just make it up because there's not a whole lot. Like you get to have an insane amount of imagination with that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, whereas I'd be like, I'm gonna make this, you know, Hussar helmet, and I'm gonna use these three things, and you know, that was the big thing. Like when I started making the Polish Hussar armor, that was like really, I think, kind of groundbreaking, because Johannes was building those helmets, and they had like this kind of weird visor, and like the tail was made out of three pieces that were just kind of folded in half. But the original ones were so much different than that. Like it was kind of a round skull with like a baseball brim visor and like multiple lame tails, and like the cheeks were shaped differently, and they had like these big. It's kind of like it was like this helmet back here. It had these big nasals on it. So I was like, you know, and at the time, I was trying to put together a suit of armor also to fight in that was like going to be suitable for my persona, which was Scottish, and there's no such thing. Like I didn't know. So I just like I picked that persona because that's what everybody else in the household was, and it was fun. Like I just wore my great kilt this past weekend for a thing, so when I was doing this research, I had found out like in the 16th century, late 16th century, a bunch of Scottish people had like 30,000 of them were mercenaries in the city of Danzig, and they were you know, and there was a Polish occupation that was there. So I was like, I can wear Polish armor. You know, and I found all this. It was crazy because I had contacted these people in Poland, and like they sent me this information, and it was like documentation of like Scottish mercenaries that had taken like tartan fabric and they used to make costume that was of the area, which was more like Polish style, like the coats and stuff, but it would have like some of their like wools and would be in it and stuff like that. It was not really clan tartans, but it was like, so I thought that was cool, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna wear this Polish stuff because it's better than wearing like English armor or French armor. I didn't want to wear like some of this bastinets and stuff that was not appealing to me. The Polish armor was very richly decorated and had stampings and all these moving parts, which is not always a good idea. And so I told Johannes, I was like, I want to build this helmet. And Sir Casimir, Rob Jimerson, actually has that particular helmet. And so I built my first Hussar helmet, and it had crazy flutes in it, much similar to this one. It was almost just like this one. And but the grill was welded onto it. It was all fixed. That one has a removable grill. And I mean, I dished out this piece of stainless steel, and I remember like Johannes was like, those flutes are going to be like impossible. And then I was like, okay. And then I talked to Pliska, and he'd be like, I saw that he had done a helmet with some teardrops in it. And he's like, so this is how I did it. So I pull out some scrap metal, and then like I would be hammering this stuff, and it was so hard. Like, so then I was like, I'm gonna heat it up with a torch, and I did that, and I hit it just as hard. I hit it just as hard as I would normally, and the metal moves so much. So then the helmet has like these crazy deep flutes and stuff in it, but I pretty much, I mean, I patterned like 90% of the helmet out all myself. Would try something, and like when I was trying to do the lobster tail on it, I got so frustrated. I calmed down, and then I asked Johannes to tell me what he thought I was doing wrong. And I remember him telling me, he's like, "Oh, put it together this way, and then draw these lines." And then I did that, and everything worked great. And like I had never seen any helmets like that at an SCA event before. And so then I made a breastplate to go with it, and then fought in that stuff. And then I was like, I can make a better version of this, and that's the version that's sitting back there. And that's what I was fighting in when I got knighted, was fighting in that kit. Which too, I was also told by the knights in our kingdom that I would never get knighted if I was fighting in a breastplate. And I was like, challenge accepted. But
it's on.
Right, it was a really cool time to be doing stuff. And then in 2006, he was like, "Hey, do you want to work here?" And I was like, yeah, like what are we gonna do? So he was like, I can work you like 30 hours a week and basically pay me minimum wage. And I was like, okay. And because Charlie was no longer working there, he got a real job. And so I started working there, and like I had by that point I had a key to the shop. I could come and go whenever I wanted. And I would go down to the shop, and at that point in time I would go down to the shop and be like, oh, what event's coming up? So like in May, I'd be like, oh, Pinzik is coming up. So I would sit down and write a list of like 6 helmets I wanted to build, and I would just build those, and we would show up, and then Johannes would sell them, and he would give me some of the money. So then I would take that money and I would buy tools and then stash them in my garage, because I didn't know. I was always like, what if I want to build armor? Like, I didn't know I was going to get a job there, So and I was also like, Johannes had a tool addiction that rubbed off on me. I think I was the only one of his apprentices that it really rubbed off on. And so I was like, I'd make something and I trade it for like an anvil, which I still have that anvil. Actually, I have the helmet now that I traded for it too, which is kind of funny. So I would collect the stuff, and then he hired me, and so then I was like, I got to a different mindset, because I was going to these events, helping him run the merchant booth, kind of, but still going and having fun and fighting. But being on the outside of being a vendor, but helping the vendor, I would see things kind of through maybe a different lens. And so when I started working there, I was like, we're going to go to this event, and I'm going to make this helmet, and I'm going to make 3 sizes of the same helmet, but all the same basic parts, but maybe some decorations. So the 3 different sizes, slightly different price points. And if someone likes one of them and it's not their size, we can always build another one, right? And so I kind of started doing that, and then I'd be like, all right, well, we need to make demi gauntlets. So I'd make like, he would make 6 demi gauntlets, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna make 20 demi gauntlets, because we would make 6 demi gauntlets, and then like 2 weeks later, I'm making 6 more demi gauntlets, and I'm like, I'm tired of making demi. So then I'm like, oh, I'll make 20 demi gauntlets. And so I would start to get this process down of like in this mindset where I would kind of get into a zone, and I would like kind of mass produce pieces, and like shape them all and grind them all at the same time. And then so as over the 5 years I worked there, like I really kind of honed that to the point where I remember we had moved the shop, and we bought out Mandrake Armory, which was incredible feat. I was like, I can't believe the armory's buying out another armory. Like, how cool is that? I remember Anita, his wife, came in, and she was like, as far as I've kept track, according to our records, you made 250 helmets last year. I'm working 27 to 30 hours a week. And I'm like, oh, and that doesn't include the ones that like, someone came in and bought, like, they got like a serial number on them, and a website thing, or stuff that got made and finished right before we went to an event, and it was never cataloged, or maybe it was paid cash for. So I was just like, wow, that's pretty incredible, I think, right?
It is. I know my sister has 2 of your helmets. Her husband used to have 1, but it got stolen. Her knight has, I think, like maybe a dozen of your helmets. He has a lot of helmets.
Wow.
But I mean, everybody I know has one of your helmets. You are protecting the brains of the SCA.
Well, I actually, it's very interesting. Over the years, I've noticed I ship on average more helmets to Ontario than I do any other kingdom.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And Atenveldt used to be like the bottom. Like if I sold 10 helmets to Ontario, I would sell 1 helmet in Atenveldt. And now, because of a couple of different people that, like this guy Mark von Neumann, Duke Mark, like he's very much into like supporting my business. So he sends all of his guys, like they have to get their stuff here. Like he's put me in a situation where like I'm now buying a shield roller because he wants me to make shields. He doesn't want to get them from anywhere else. And so I'm like, okay, I'll get a shield roller and stuff. But so that's kind of changing a little bit. I think this month I've taken 4 orders for people in our kingdom, which is really strange, but which is cool. I really like it because I like seeing the stuff out on the field, and I like seeing how people have put the rest of the kit together and what they've done with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people decorate them. They'll buy like a really plain one, and they'll put their own decorations on it, and they send me photos, or sometimes they ask me questions like, hey, I was trying to do this and I couldn't get the lay right. And so sometimes I'll make a video on Facebook Messenger and I'll send it to them like, this is how I would do it, and stuff like that. But
so you're turning around and mentoring as well.
Yeah. So actually, I had a student that lives in Jalisco, Mexico, down there. So this guy Alan Bijman, he's nothing to do with the SCA. He was doing like the steel fighting, the ACL, and things like that. And I was on a Facebook group called the United League of Armors, and he tracked me down. He tracked down a bunch of armors, and he was asking me a lot of questions. And so he's super duper nice guy. We have a lot of the same like interests outside of like medieval combat and stuff, and I like to go to Mexico. And but so I would make videos. Some of the videos are on my YouTube channel. They're hilarious because I'd be like, here's how you grind a helmet. And like I would put my phone down and it would be filming the ceiling, and you would just see the sparks, and I'd be like, and I would just laugh at it. But like like he was trying to build like a helmet that was going to be like his signature helmet for the ACL. So I helped him design a sugarloaf helmet pattern like over the internet, and then I built it, and because he was having a hard time, and I sent it to him so then he could have something, because we're in a situation where like we go to fighter practice, we could pick up something that somebody else made, but down where he's at, like any armor, he's trying to start up this whole medieval fighting club, and so like and I still help him out. Now he's gotten so good. I was like, dude, how did you get that shape on those legs? Make me a video, and stuff like that. Just totally awesome, But before the lockdown, people would come down here all the time. Well, actually, when my shop was in, closer to Phoenix, people like daily sometimes they would be like, I'm in the shop, no one can come by. I got to get this stuff done. But yeah, I definitely teach people as often as I can. I get people all the time asking me about being an apprentice, which is a lot different, but as far as like, just coming down and maybe learning how to do something, I definitely run a fairly open shop for that. But the apprentice thing is definitely a different apple,
yeah. Have you taken an apprentice?
I have. I have an apprentice. He was in one of his name's Thor, and I met him at my my first SCA event I ever went to. I met him. He was part of that camp, and he's super duper talented. And I wish he had more time, but he has a special needs, I guess you could say. His kid's got, I can't remember what it's called, but he's super duper like highly focused, whatever that is. I think it's called. Shit, normally I know it, but it's a lot of work, that he has. And then he also films like operations all the time. And he gets super duper busy with that.
Yeah.
And and he's also like, his like best skill is procrastination too. So, like a week before Australia, he's like, oh, I'm making this thing, and like he'll totally make this awesome thing and like document it all out and stuff, and then like you know, I don't put a lot of I put into my students put into it. So at first I put in a lot, and then if they're not reciprocating that back, then I'll ask them what's going on, and obviously like life and all that type of stuff has to take precedence, and then I'll let them do what they got to do, and just touch base with them on a more like non student level, periodically to make sure everything's okay and
Keep the
stuff like that,
relationship
and let them know
going.
that they're still welcome to come back and everything. But
Yeah, you can't, that's the one thing that you can't teach is motivation and dedication. That's
yeah, right. You
gotta
have to
come.
kind of want that, and it's that's always been my thing too. Is like I guess I say I'm not a very competitive person, but I am extremely competitive all the time, and like you know that. So right now I have a Squire Owen. He's like a mini me. I mean, as far as in the shop, like he's super duper. He's like my, he wears a Squire's belt, but he's also my apprentice and he's my protege. I mean, I kind of now I'm at the point now where I'm just like, what if you were to get a peerage, which one would you want first? And then that's the belt, I guess.
Yeah.
Don't run around like with like a candy cane colored like all three belts on, like pick one, and then like even Rowan, he was my Squire. I knew it was going to be a hard challenge for him, fighting wise. He's got a huge heart, and he like will volunteer like his house, his apartment, his cow, like anything. Like he'll do anything to help somebody else out. And I knew that one day he would probably be a pelican. So I just, kept pushing him towards more volunteering stuff. And then when he got his pelican, I was like, he got his pelican before me. But I was like, when I saw what was going on with him as my Squire, I was like, you know what, like. I'd seen some other knights like talking about how their Squires are doing too much volunteer stuff and not fighting enough, and that they kind of said it as a negative thing that their Squire's going to get a pelican first. And I never really had a lot to say about that. But then when I was in that situation, I was like, I could give Jay a hard time about this, or I can nurture that and help him become a peer. Like that's my job. Not so that's as
Help
far
him
as reproduction
shine,
and the
help
right
him
as far as
shine in the best way for him.
yeah, like as far as my job in the SCA, like in reproduction, like I need to help him fulfill what his dreams and his desires are. And like just because he's wearing a red belt doesn't mean that I have to like force him to be that. So and he's still like my art student. He comes down and he's not so good at like armoring, but like I found other things that I could teach him. I taught him how to acid etch. So like he's been acid etching scrolls for people.
Oh, cool.
Stuff and doing things like that. Like I helped him out with some leather patterns, and then showed him how to make like these like tarsal pouches, like Hungarian pouches that he could acid etch, and he was making them and giving them away as gifts all the time, and metal bracelets and stuff with some stamping and punch work and things like that. Owen comes down here and just like makes whatever he wants, and then I'll come into the shop and I'll be like, oh my God, Sean was in here and he put together 10 helmets like for inventory, because he gets bored. He lives down the street.
Awesome.
But,
So
and he's a fun. My Squire Owen Sean is a phenomenal woodworker. Like that's actually his thing, is his woodworking. And I wish I could like. We don't have enough woodworking tools, so I've been trying to figure out how to get woodworking tools into the shop without burning everything down and stuff, so he could like really grow at that. Like I mean, he made a box at his house for Morgan and Liz, and it came out phenomenal. Like I mean, he spent like almost 200 hours on this box putting it together, and he used to build custom homes.
Oh wow.
So he's super duper talented. He helped me build my shop. And I was like, I don't know how to build this shop. But he's like, I know how to do it. stuff. So,
Let me
and
take
he's
the
also
wheel.
like the head of my household.
Aw.
Our camp. He's like the guy in charge. So that's kind of cool too, because I get to help him on that aspect.
Yeah.
He's not big on like singles fights. He likes doing melee fighting. So I'm like, if you want to be a knight, and you're going to do melee fighting, then we have to have you as a leader of men. You don't have to be the best melee fighter on the field, but if you're a good commander and you keep the unit together and we show up and we look good and everybody's following orders and you're doing the right thing, it just doesn't always work out in your favor. That's out of your control. So, I work with them on that type of stuff.
I was going to ask you how one of the things that I struggle with as an artist is doing art and then making things for sale. Like it's something I've never been able to kind of wrap my head around, but it sounds like that just was kind of your path. You kind of came into the art thing and you were doing production stuff and it just kind of blended together for you.
Well, I think part of it had to do with like my business background. Like, when I was 17, I got a job at a Hardee's, which was where my wife was working, which was not where I wanted to work then because I couldn't really stand her in high school. It's like we met each other in 1990, my senior year in high school. But and she actually told me, "Oh, I saw you got a job at Hardee's." She woke me up in homeroom. "Well, you got a job at Hardee's?" I'm like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" And like I remember the bell rang. I went out to my car and drove home. And my mom's like, "Oh, is school canceled today?" I'm like, "No." And then my dad came home for lunch and he's like, "What are you doing home?" I'm like, "This chick is annoying. And she says I got a job at Hardee's and I can't take the job because she works there." And he's like, "Well, son, you got to pay insurance." And then, but then I got a second job, making pizza. And then within a month, the guy's like, "I need a manager. You're going to be my manager." And then he had 2 other restaurants. And then, when I turned 18, he's like, "You're going to be like the general manager of all 3 stores." And like, I was like wherever I was working, and like, he'd be like, "Oh, we're going to go skiing. Like, you're in charge of the stores for the weekend." And I was like, "I'm 18. Like, you're going to leave an 18-year-old, like we have beer on tap. Like, I can't no, like, I had to make sure there was someone old enough to serve it, but we would lock the place up." I'm like, "Is he crazy? Is Steve crazy?" Like, he just left an 18-year-old skateboarder in charge of his store with beers, and but I took it for what it was, and so I never betrayed that trust with him on that, which was good. But I learned all this stuff about like kind of like business aspect of things, and then when I was working at Windrose, I had already opened a pizza restaurant in Tempe, and then I had to sell my half of it because I made a bad decision with my business partner, and he got himself in trouble with the law. And so I sold my half, and then I helped a friend open a steak delivery restaurant, which was a crazy concept. And then, I was managing that, and then he sold that to one of the delivery drivers there, and that guy didn't know how to run it. So then I was running it while he delivered the steaks, and so I was still like, it was just crazy. So when I was working at Windrose, like it wasn't my place to tell John all the time how I would do things. Like sometimes he didn't take kindly to that, and it was one of the areas where I kind of felt like we would have friction. And I was trying to do, I mean, Johannes was like, as odd as it may sound, he like became a father figure to me at one point for a while. And that's why when our relationship crumbled, it was devastating. Like, I mean, I think it was just really bad. And but so I had a book of ideas that I kept there, and it was always like with my patterns. He could have seen it any time. So like I would come up with an idea, and like sometimes I would run something by him, and he would like make fun of it or say it was horrible, and I would write it down because I have a horrible memory. And then so when he got rid of me, I was gonna go open up a steak delivery restaurant actually, and then a friend of mine was like, "No, dude, you're opening up an armory, and you're gonna like make this work." And I was like, "Kidding me?" And so it was weird. Like I wasn't working at Windrose any longer, and like the day that I walked out to my car, I posted on the Armor Archive, like, "I don't work at Windrose anymore, so like don't bug me if you guys have any problems there." And like, I posted it, and within 5 minutes, my phone rang, and it was like Sir Luther from Atenveldt Armory, and Kaid was like, "What are you doing? I need someone to come out here. We're working on this stuff for this jousting armor for this TV show, and we're behind." And then I was like, "Okay, like I can probably like come out and talk to you about it." And then I hung up, and then I got in my truck, and then the phone rang, and it was Tony Swatton, who runs like the Sword and the Stone, like special effects studio in Burbank. And he's like, "Hey, we don't really know each other, but you should come out and like, I might have some work." And then Chris Gilman, Sir Gaston from Kaid, he owns his studio. He called me. I was like, "Dude." Yeah. So I drove out to California and like met up with Chris, met up with Tony, and then I went to see Brent at Atenveldt, and we came to an agreement, and I worked there. And while I was there, my buddy Doug, who owned an automotive upholstery shop, rented out a building and like came home and was like, "Yeah, dude, so we have a building. You need to go open a business account, get a business license, tax ID. Here's some money to go buy some supplies." And I was like, "Oh shit," like
this is happening.
Yeah, and like he paid my rent for a year. He's like, "Just pay me back like after the first year." And I was like, "And just make payments." And I was like, "Oh my fucking god." And there's so much stress, and then, but after the first 6 months, I was like 10 to 12 months backed out on orders, like immediately. And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, wow." Like, and so I had to like figure out, how I was going to do all that. And I taken the things I had learned at Windrose, like as far as like how I was producing things there and getting things done, and was able to set my shop up a little differently, how I thought it would work better. And what tools I needed to, being at Windrose, I got to see all the good and the bad. Like I got to see what tools were working and what tools were not good investments. And we used to always joke that like Johannes had like the best stage. Like if you like from a musician perspective, like he had all these cool instruments, and so if you knew how to play the instrument well, you were going to do really really good at it. And so I looked at it from that perspective and was like, so I don't need to invest in this. I don't need to buy this. And there's times where I definitely still bought those things because they look cool. And like, I was like, I don't know, it was a good deal. So you get it. Like I got a I just sold a 285-pound anvil that I gotten. And I used a 245-pound anvil. You don't need an anvil that big to make armor. But you know what? I can sit on it and planish stuff on the stake, right?
It's and a nice chair.
Cool. Like I have a Nintendo video game controller from the 80s, like plugged into my anvil, because people would be like, "How do you make stuff so fast?" And I'm like, I go to work. Like I don't play video games and stuff. And then so I would just take pictures. Here it is, like up, down, select, A, B, start. I got a Nintendo controller. That's how I make it, and I applied all those things to the shop. And then at the same time, like I was getting into a spot where I wasn't making anything too, like nothing was really pushing me for like 2 years, like to like make something new. Like I had some ideas, but I was having a hard time, because I have ADHD. So I was having a hard time budgeting my time. I didn't know that I was mental at the time, but I was having a hard time budgeting my time and like, and how to get some stuff to the next level, and I have a really good working relationship with almost every armorer I've ever met, right? Like I try to maintain a good relationship with people. And like I remember Ugo like called me on the phone, like out of the blue, like, "Dude, I got your number and you should like make these Vren grills on your helmets." I'm like, "Dude, I can't make Vren grills. Like one, I don't even know how to turn on a computer hardly. And two, like that's Vren stuff. Like I'm not gonna, like that's not cool. Like that's not a historical item. So like for me to do that is like copying Vren in a way, right? And so I, and Ugo was like, "I talked to Vren. He said it was fine." And so I was like, so then I contacted Vren and was like, "Hey, we don't know each other." And so, he was like, "Yeah, and Vren's actually made grills for some of my helmets too. I've made helmets without grills so he could put stuff in them." And so that was like a kind of a good springboard when I started being able to do that. And then, I was able to, it kind of opened up a floodgate where I was like, okay, so I remember I built a helmet with like one of my like cheesy ass, like I kind of based the artwork off of like some artwork from a Hungarian like Rus book that I had an artwork. So I had like this flower like with this seeds and stuff in it, and I built this pretty sweet helmet. I put it on there. I put it on Facebook on my business page, and I sold the helmet in less than a minute. Like this guy from Alaska hits me up, Mike, and he's like, "How much for that helmet?" I'm like, "Dude, I built it for myself, man." And he's like, "How much for the helmet?" And I'm like, "I don't know, 1,800." And he's like, "Cool." And it was like ping, like it was my PayPal account, like right then. I was like, "Dude, I gotta like invoice that and stuff." And then like 2 days later, the helm's gone viral. Like it has like 80,000 views.
Holy crap.
And I went from like 1,000 people following my shop page to like 8,000 people following my shop page and like 11,000 people following my shop page. And it was crazy. So that really lit like a creative fire underneath me that I still have to this day. And that was like probably 2016, I think I did that. So one of the things I do is like every year, like I would take like Australia War, since it's local. I would be like, I have to go to Australia War with like totally like awesome decked out, super duper like cool ass helmet. And I don't care how expensive it's gonna get or how much time it's gonna take, but I have to like hopefully have learned something new in the process of building it. And then I also have to make it to fit me because I just expect not to sell it, right? And the cool thing is I have yet to not sell one of those helmets. Like I usually don't make it past Australia. Sometimes they don't even make it to Australia.
Wow.
And I have to ask the customer if I can mail it to them after Australia War, because I usually won't post a picture of it until like a week prior to get people excited. And then someone's like, "Oh, I want to buy it." Like, shit, can I mail it to you after Australia? Because I want to have it in the booth. That's what I built it for. And so I've been doing that like consistently every year since then. And like last year was supposed to be my first Pinzig as my own company, and I was working on a super duper sweet helmet and like made these kind of cool scorpions and used some techniques I'd never used before. And then, COVID happened. And so I was like, all right, so the helmet's still unfinished because I was like, I don't have to rush to get it done now. And I've learned some other things since then that are now going to make the helmet even probably more expensive and, things like that. But it's just a way to like keep pushing yourself, to be better at it. And I don't know.
It's hard without events that like they provided deadlines to get stuff done, and now they're not there.
Yeah, well, and like the other thing with the business aspect of it is like, because I get people like once a month, not as frequent as it used to be, but now it's probably like maybe once a month or so. Hey, I want to like start up my own armoring company. Do you have any advice? Like, take a small business class. What? Well, what about no armoring advice. Take a small business class.
Yeah.
And if they refuse, if they say that, or they don't want to do that, I'm like, go to Etsy. Etsy has a really good article on how to price your goods. Or I'll send them like there's a couple of really good blacksmith videos on how blacksmiths who are successful price their goods. And I have to tell people, I'm like, even if you're working from home, and so you're like, yeah, my overhead on my shop is like part of my house, like, so there is no overhead for that. That's awesome. That's cool. So what if you were renting that? What if something happened and you had to work out of your house, and now you have to, so you have to price all your stuff. One, like worst case scenario, like I used to do that in my pizza restaurant. Like I would do food cost, and I'd be like, how much does this pizza cost if like a 5-year-old makes it? Okay, so the cost is going to be $6, let's say. They put way too much cheese on it, or all this type of stuff. So like when it comes to making stuff in your shop, like you have to be like, okay, so I have to be flexible on my materials costs at some point because things go up in price. So But you don't want to always like, it gets frustrating as a customer if like, you have an item, let's say you have like some buttons that are really super popular that maybe you have a customer that buys them from you all the time, every couple of months because they're using them on projects. And then like 1 month the buttons are like for $20. The next month are 5 for $22. The next month they're like $17. And you're changing your price because of the materials cost is fluctuating. Well, at that point, your best bet is to be like, they're always going to be $25. So that, and if I get the material for cheaper, that's awesome. I can make note of that. And if I want to put them on sale, I can do that. Or like, I'm probably losing money somewhere else on a product. So that's super good. And that needs to go back into the business. Right. So, like the other things I would tell people, like, you have your own company, you're building armor. It's all done. Your welder breaks. Who's paying for it? Are you paying for it or is your company paying for it? Are you going to take money out of, do you have money set aside in your savings account to pay $800 to get your welder fixed? Or does your business have $800 set aside? Where's that coming from? And a good business plan will have, the business will be able to pay for it, right? For those things. And then also, when you see something that you always wanted and it's always been out of your price range, but then all of a sudden it shows up, like, can the business afford to get that? Like, how's that all go on? Like, oh, my lease just, I remember when I was leasing a place in Mesa, like in 2011, my rent was like $875 a month. When I left in 2018, it was like with taxes, it was $1,600 a month. Like, and so like that's a lot, right? And then also when the rent goes up, also like I had to have an $8 million policy on my place because the neighbors and stuff have to be covered because I had like I had a torch and things like that in there. So that fluctuates every year, unfortunately. So you have to be able to figure that cost in too, right? So that's why, like, I've talked to people that are like, oh, I just wanted to, start this business making this acid-etched jewelry because, I made some stuff and I know that the materials aren't that expensive and I'm good on a computer. And so this other guy's selling a medallion for $40 and I know I can sell the medallion for $25. And it's like, okay, well.
But can you?
But can you? And so like, I remember talking to this one particular guy that was doing that, that was here in Atenveldt. I had two guys that were, Arthur was making stuff and this other guy was making similar stuff. And Arthur's like, can't, he sells his stuff all the time and the other guy can't sell it. And I'm like, well, why don't you like have some pride in your work and charge more money for it and see what happens? And, like, and then what are you going to do? Like when like something breaks, like your printer breaks or like your business isn't, you haven't like, I'll look at when I price, like, you look at something and you're like, okay, so the government's going to take 30%. If I do it right, I can get some of that back at the end of the year, but I have to pay federal taxes and stuff. So take that into consideration. I always do it a bit high than it really is. And then like, your materials costs, like take that into consideration. Like what is the overhead for your business? Like, your vehicle, the gas, your time, like, how far is it to the post office or the UPS store? Like I remember talking to another armorer and he was like, yeah, dude, I have to drive an hour and a half each way, like to the UPS store and back. And I'm like, so you're like, because I remember talking to him and he's selling like a Spangen Viking helmet with a chainmail drape on it for like $350. And I'm like, okay, I know the drape cost you $99. And then he's like, I know what all this costs. I'm like, why are you selling it so cheap? And he was just like, well, that's, that's what I charge. And then he just happened to tell me like, it takes him 3 hours to ship it. And I was like, so if you had an employee and you're paying them a living wage of $16 an hour, so you're going to pay that person to take that to the UPS store, and he was like, I'm like, where's that going to come from? Like, that doesn't just, are you going to charge the customer like $100 to ship that now? Or are you going to have that somehow rolled into the price of your goods? Or are you going to be like, oh, I'm just going to pay UPS $50 a week to stop by, even though I might not have something shipped, it's still cheaper, know? And he was just like, it never even crossed his mind, and he's like, I go to the scrapyard and I rummage through for everything. I'm like, okay, well, how many hours a week do you spend doing that? Like, how many hours a week do you spend answering emails? How many hours a week do you spend doing all this stuff? So I spend 25 hours a week not at my workbench, like answering emails, paying the invoices, trying to it seems like every month I create a new filing system and things like that. But it's just stuff you always have to figure in, and like if you get like a really good price on a lot of material, then maybe consider like lowering your price for a little bit. But if everybody's happy paying what you're charging, then why lower your price? Like, you're not always going to find that deal. And like, like, what was it? It's like caught me off to go buy welding wire, and I was like, wow, the welding wire went up. And then I was like, what's this $25 tariff on welding wire? And the guy's like, there's a $25 tariff on welding wire. I was like, I mean, I didn't change my prices because of that, but I was like, because I already have like incidentals like that kind of rolled in, I'll figure out how to make it up, somewhere else. So it's really, really hard to, and like, it gets really hard. Like, I'll get someone will email me 300 times before they pay a deposit on their helmet.
Oh my gosh.
Like, trying to design it, and like, do I bill that as the design time? And then like that, usually when they take that long, I know that they're going to email me 1,000 times. Is it done yet? Like, if I say it'll be done in 18 months, the following week they're going to be like, hey, do you have a progress photo? Have you started it? No, dude, it doesn't take me. And so, and I try to answer all of them. And I have a bad habit lately of looking at them on my phone, and then it doesn't have the same, like, it's not highlighted the same in Gmail after you've looked at it. And so when I log on the computer, I just don't see it. Or sometimes my phone archives them, and I don't know what that means on Gmail, but when it archives, I don't know where they go. I haven't figured that out yet. So like, I'll try to remember what was the person's name, and I'll do like a Gmail search and I'll find something. But yeah, it's totally weird. I'm not good at some of it.
But so like, I'm gonna back you up a little bit. Yeah. Valora had a question. She says, given your history and personal experience with getting into the SCA and how you guys were treated, how has that affected how you introduce new people to the SCA?
I try to always kind of keep that in the back of my head, and like I've had a lot of new people actually come by the shop this year, which is kind of cool. And so I try to tell them, like, I had a guy come up from Tucson, and I'm like, oh, so you're gonna go, who do you know down there that, do you know anybody? And he was like, yeah, he knew a couple of people. And I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I've had some interesting run-ins with those people. But I didn't say anything to him about that, because like, maybe I had like a odd couple of encounters, but I just instead found something positive to say about him, and was like, oh yeah, and was like, if you need anything, if you see me at an event or something, if you want to come up and work on something, I know it's like an hour and a half away, like, you can come up and things like that. And like, like, my worst problem about new people is like, I have to meet you like 10 times, and there's something memorable has to happen for me to like remember who you are, like your name sometimes, because I get so many people that come into the booth. But like, I got into a period in the late like 20, or like in the late, like around 2010 or so, where I wasn't like that, where I allowed myself to get caught up in kind of what was just going on with me and our household, and that group of people. And we were always kind of picking on each other, and not until did I step away from all of that did I realize that not only were we picking on each other, but we were also probably picking on some other people in ways that it wasn't good. Like, because we're not as familiar with them, like not on the same friendly level. So like, I actually tracked some people down and was like, hey, like, if I ever did anything to offend you or anything, I want to apologize. Like, I just got caught up in the bullshit that was going on at the time, and I don't normally allow that to happen, but I just had so much going on in my life. I didn't know, I was undiagnosed ADHD, I was undiagnosed hypothyroidism, so I had like all these chemical imbalances going on, and I was trying to figure out different ways to cope with a lot of stuff. And So I did have to track those people down, but nowadays, I just try to I try not to tell them that they have to do something. Like I'll be like, I had a new fighter. My friend Nader brought his girlfriend in here, and she's fighting. We're gonna build her a helmet, and she was telling me about her persona, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Is that what you want to look like on the field? Like your belly dancing Middle Eastern persona? We can do this type of helmet. Like what are? She's like, well, I kind of like these Viking helmets. I'm like, well, that's cool too. Like no one says you should just only have Middle Eastern stuff. I'm like, we can do the Viking helmet will actually be a little bit cheaper, and it won't be like pointy and stuff because she's short. And I was like, you might get hit on the point. I'm like, we can do this. And so it was like, what is your interest and what do you want to do? And let's kind of go off that. At this particular point, if someone wants to go to an SCA event and dress up like it's a fairy, I'll be like, that's cool. Like, what kind of fairy do you want to dress up as? Like a purple fairy or what? Like, to put it that far, like I have one of the Laurels down here is making me some wizard's robes for like the next Australia War, and because I'm probably not going to merchant at it, and so I was like, I'm going to dress up as a wizard, and I'm making like spell component containers out of like antlers and stuff.
Awesome.
And I've gone to Australia War and worn. I love Conan the Barbarian, so I have like some priest robes from the movie, and I have a big standard back there, and I've dressed up like that on Sunday at Australia and like processed in the court, closing court and stuff. So I can be pretty open about that. Like I try and find out what a new person's interest is and engage in that, and because it used to be.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because it used to be like the thing was you get a new person and you have to figure out how to incorporate them and get them into your fold and into your household and into your camp. And I kind of feel like that's a bad approach. Like I think that I tried it and it worked a lot of times, but I feel bad and I think it's a bad approach.
The way I approach it is I welcome people in. And I tell them I will facilitate, you getting involved in whatever it is that you're interested in. There are a lot of niches in the SCA, and I might not be your cup of tea, and that's totally cool. But I'm gonna hook you up with what is your cup of tea and help you find your people.
Right. Yeah. When I was a squire and I started going to Johannes' shop, and Duchess Katerina down here, she was like, came up to me at an event. She's like, hey, so you're going to Johannes' shop? And she's like, are you his apprentice? And I'm like, it's funny you say that. Like the last event we were at, he like told someone that I was his apprentice. So I guess so. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. She's like, well, I want to introduce you to some Laurels. And I'm like, oh, okay, some different Laurels. So I didn't really know very many. Like I knew like one in our Barony. And so we're walking around the event and she goes, I just want to be up front. I'm going to introduce you to some Laurels that I absolutely adore and they adore me. I'm going to introduce you to some Laurels that I know would put a knife in me if they could. But I want you to meet like all these different people. And, and she just prefaced that. I realized later on after the experience, because there were some Laurels that she introduced me to. As soon as she walked away, they were like talking some shit about her. And which I was like, you walk away from that and you're like, that isn't like, she just introduced me to you as someone who's an apprentice to somebody. Like it was very unpeer-like.
Agreed.
Yeah. Right. And I was like,
cool.
But I thought a lot about it, but I didn't say a lot about it because I didn't know if it was my place to. And I remember Katerina eventually on her 20th anniversary of her Pelican, she had her vigil that she never had, and I went into her tent, and that was one of the things I talked to her about. I was like, hey, you remember that time? Like, I just wanted to let you know, like I've been sitting on this for so long, but I wanted to get it off my chest and let you know like how odd I thought that experience was. And
people are weird.
Like and I wanted to remind her because I had seen her kind of be a little wicked, and I used that as a stepping stone, to kind of be like, check yourself. We're all guilty of it, and just and that's the big thing. We're all guilty of it. Just how often is it intentional? So, but I agree. It's you come in and you facilitate somebody, and like they might not stick with you, they might not be into what it is that you're doing in your camp, but like it's cool. Like down the road, you get to see like their growth or what they're doing. And, there's always that thing there. Like, I know like Maneko used to always be like, David Angie took me to my first event, like even like I think at her Pelican ceremony, she brought that up, and stuff like that. So, um, that's always going to be there with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter where she goes.
Yeah.
I just made her a cool wizard hat with a Conan motif. You should check it out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's got
That's
the
funny.
snakes on it and
Yeah.
it's pointy. What was I gonna say? Oh, I can't remember. Merrick sent me pictures of him in the cart on the toilet, but I
Oh,
can't,
did he?
yeah, I can't get him up on the thing that I made.
Oh, dude, it's so funny. It was just so hilarious, like, man, I can't, like, I could go on for hours with some of the stuff that we did. Oh, geez, yeah, that was funny. Then he did it so good. He was like, "Eat the Tamlins, eat the Tamlins." And I think this guy Eric, Duchess Nichelle's ex-husband, they were still together. They were the Crown, and I think the story I heard was Eric was sitting in food court and looked at Duke Phelan and was like, "Are those mine?" And he's like, "Yes, Your Majesty, those are yours." And so when Merrick was king at Estrella, I sent my squires out on a little like see where he's at mission, and so then I put a toilet in front of his tent. So when he came back that night, there would be a toilet there.
That's love.
Yeah.
Well, I did pull some pictures together, so let's go ahead and look at some pictures.
Okay. Oh my God. That was my first event in 1998. As of this past spring, I could still fit into those leather pants.
Wow.
Right now, I think I put on like COVID-10, so I might not be able to, but yeah. And I think Angie bought that from like Museum Replicas, that outfit. That was like the Saturday at Estrella War, I think. Big old site token.
Awesome.
I recently just gave that hat away, actually, too. To a guy who's trying to get a SCA thing going. Like he's trying to get involved in Maine, and he was out here and stuff. But yeah, that's funny.
Oh, okay. Let's slow down.
Oh, so that is a tool I just got. So I actually haven't made an official announcement, but I guess this could be a good time to do it. I bought out Anselm Armory. Luther is retired from armoring. He is doing some wonderful work at Lockheed, working on some super secret projects. And he's I just saw him in September. He's super duper. It was cool to see how happy he was. But part of the purchase of his company was I got this hammer, this air power hammer. It's called the Bull Hammer. It's got a whole bunch of tooling for it. I can't wait to get it set up sometime next year. It's got a 1-inch air hose in it, which is gigantic. Like most of them are like half-inch or something like that. This thing is an air hog. So I got to drywall the shop and run some air lines so we can try it out. And I have some dies that I bought with them that actually will speed up the process, and I can strike out like a whole set of gauntlet lames. I can cut out the lames. I can put them in a forge all in a stack and get them hot, and then put them in the die, and boom, the hammer will stamp them all out, and then it gets one whole gauntlet done, like all the finger lames for one gauntlet. The tool next to it is my baby. That's my hydraulic press. I found that on Craigslist for the ridiculously low price of $1,200. I couldn't get out to the guy's house fast enough. And when I got there, I only had $100 on me, and it was a Sunday. And I was like, I didn't even negotiate. I was like, I want it. Can I give you $100? I'll come back tomorrow. And that has saved me a lot of time. Like some of my patterns, I've gotten them so dialed in from making them so many times that we've been digitizing them, and I'll get them laser cut, like just the basic shape, like on a cheek, or like I have a thing on my website. It's a semi-custom armor where it's like Build-A-Bear. So you get to pick parts.
Uh-huh.
So like I'll get a bunch of parts laser cut, and then when they show up, I'll do like rights and lefts, small, medium, and large, and I'll just do them all on the air hammer or the hydraulic press, and literally like in a day, I can shape enough parts to do 100 helmets. And then I have another tool that's really famous in my shop called the Helminator. It has a YouTube video on it, which is it's hilarious. And it's what it is a vibratory tumbler with a bunch of ceramic media in it. And it's like, I think it's a 5-gallon tumbler. So you can take all these pre-shaped parts that are very uniform, and you can throw them in the tumbler, and it deburrs all the sharp edges. So
Nice.
that saves me, if I put them in there for 30 minutes, it's super loud. So right now it's outside of my shop. In my old shop, it was in the shop, and I would turn it on and have to go to lunch. But it will deburr all the edges. So then, like, it literally saves me like hundreds of dollars in sandpaper, because now I don't have to run these stainless steel edges over the sandpaper because they've been in the
And
thing.
tons of time too.
Tons of time. Like, it's a huge, like, this is one of the things I was like, why didn't we have this at Windows? Like, why didn't we make one, like, and do this process? And it was just the difference in how he was working and how I was working. It's almost like having an employee. I just don't have to pay like any social security taxes on it or anything. That's an awesome helmet. I built that for that's one of the helmets that I built for Australia War last year. That was like, everything that's done on the helmet, I've done the processes before, but some of the stuff on the back of the tail, on the back plate behind it, was a little sloppy, and so I kind of perfected some ways to do it. And so this was like one of those booyah helmets that I made that I was like, I don't care if I sell it. And someone bought it before the event. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, it's a really nice stainless steel Roman helmet. I was really like, I was so excited when I made that one, and I started another one like on the shelf over there.
It's gorgeous. Our local Baron, I think it's in the flyer that I made, and our local Baron of Three Mountains, Portland, has a Roman persona, and he was like, I want it. So I love this one.
So this was my self-esteem helmet. I built this for myself. So the interesting thing is when I worked at Windrose, I built my very first one of these Italian Soleils. So this is like dates to like 1495, I believe. I think the original is in a museum in Rhodes, but is it? Or no, maybe it's in London now. But I think it was found in like Rhodes. Maybe that's what it was. But when I built the very first one, I etched a brow band, and then I etched my device in the plume cup, and it came out almost every bit as good as this one did. And it was also a 12 gauge mild steel. So when I did the finish on it, we took it and had this process called black oxide, which gives it like a pearl shiny black color. And it did have the laurel wreath on it, obviously. Like, I was still a squire when I made that one. Mm-hmm. And so Pennsic was coming up, and I was like looking at Johannes in our inventory, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna make a different plume cup for this helmet, and we'll just take it to Pennsic and we'll sell it, because I can make another one, because we kind of needed to have some cool stuff. And it was one of those things I did off the clock, so I knew that if we sold it, I was also gonna get some money out of it too. Like, he was gonna give me a kickback on it. So I took the plume cup off, and I was actually fighting in a tournament when Countess Mariana came up. I was just getting ready to salute my opponent, and she comes up, she goes, oh my God, you sold that helmet for $1,200. And I was just like, what? And I literally walked out like it to go get my money. Like great thing. I was like, what? Like, I was so distracted. And the guy was like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, dude. I just, I mean, she didn't know. And right. And so I kept the plume cup. So when I was in my old shop, I started building this helmet, and I'd never done a laurel wreath like that before. So I got like this half round brass stock and hand fabricated each one of those leaves, and put this helmet together. And was like, I got the helmet. So I was working on trying to do a Lance Connect fighting kit. So now I was like, I got to work on the rest of it. And then I got into a situation where, it cost a lot of money to build the shop and to move my shop down here. And there was like a whole, it never works out how you want it. You're like, I'm gonna have 30 days of downtime of nothing, which ends up being 3 months.
Ugh.
So I got into a situation. So I took the plume cup off and I posted it for sale, and I was like, whoever wants this, I'll etch your device within reason in the plume cup, and like sold it immediately. Like I think somebody in Tennessee bought it, a Laurel in Tennessee, made a really sweet Lance Connect fighting kit with it, and so got to make another one for myself. But it was so funny because people were like, "There's so much stuff on there," and I was like, "Yeah, like it's my self-esteem helmet, So if I'm ever, I was like, I could take it to an event, or if I'm ever feeling like appreciated, I could put that on.
I'm worth it.
This is a really cool helmet. So I never built a helmet like this before. And Sir Guy, from was he in the East Kingdom? He's in Brooklyn. He had sent me a little drawing and was like, "Hey, I want a helmet like this." And so I was like, "Whoa!" So I made the top like 6 times, trying to figure out how to make it out of stainless steel and like not have to raise it out of one piece of metal, because he was on a particular budget, and which I totally overwent, but I couldn't charge him anymore. But it's basically like kind of a Crusader pot helmet, and he took it off some like relief stone carvings. The face on the original was much shorter, but for SCA purposes, we extended it down, and this is actually like probably one of my more favorite helmets I did last year. And he was super cool and being patient with me too.
That helps. Oops,
Yeah.
I skipped one. There we go.
Oh yes, Volksguard 5 style helmet. So like the original on these, everything after the middle panel is all woven. But I couldn't figure out how to do that affordably and strong enough to withstand combat in the SCA, unless I made it out of like chromoly steel, like 4130, which is I would totally rather make stuff out of 4130 and heat treat it than stainless. But people like to not get rust, so I end up making everything in stainless. But if I could just do everything in like chromoly steel and heat treat it, it would make, because you can soften the metal and stuff. But yeah, this was, and like, so I kind of just based this off of a Volksguard find, and then like I made up the nasal, and just did, it's one of the things I was mentioning earlier, like with Norse stuff, you got to have like a certain creative element. And I was inspired by some stuff I had saw that Vren did, like how he was doing. So this is also like before I started dating photos. So this is probably like 2015 when I did this. This is definitely my old shot, but
yeah, I pulled some old stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally cool. I'm actually building one of these right now. I got to do the last kind of finishing touches, and the guy's going to be home from Afghanistan soon, I think.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm gonna have it for
And there's a grill under here, right?
Yeah, there's a grill underneath there, and it's actually stainless steel chainmail too. So each link is welded. Wow. I get those from Master Newt, who like kind of pioneered chainmail manufacturing in the 70s, I guess, or something like that. He lives here in Phoenix. But yeah, each link is welded, so it makes it maintenance free.
Very cool.
So this is an interesting helmet. This is like one of my dream helmets. So Richard from Knotwolf Armory, we used to sell his stuff in our booth at Windrose all the time, like at Lily's War and Gulf Wars and Estrella. I mean, all the events he would go to, and he'd bring some helmets. And he brought in this helmet when you had this top like this, and I was like, I've never seen anything like that. Like, where'd you get that documentation on that? And Richard's like, looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, dude, that's a clinker. It's a boat hull of a Viking, of a boat. It's called the clinker, like this style. And so we were sitting around a campfire, him and Rod from used to own Mandrake Armory in Calentier, and they're sitting on a campfire talking about stuff. And he's like, I should build a helmet that looks like an upside down boat. And so he made the first one, and it's kind of been a signature helmet style of his. And like, I can't tell you how many times I've almost bought one. Like I have a helmet of Richard's. Actually, I have a lot of helmets from other armors. I try and collect stuff from other people that I like, and that I can afford, right? But so I kept getting requests for this helmet, all the time. And I'm like, you got to get it from Richard. And they're like, Richard doesn't work in stainless. I'm like, well, I'm not going to build Richard's stuff. So then finally, like one day, I was like, Fergus in the West was like, his has got copper all over it. He was like, dude, I want one of these so bad. I want it stainless. And so I was like, all right. So we were at the event, and I sent Richard a Facebook message and was like, hey, dude, Richard, I got so many people asking me about this helmet in stainless. Like, is it cool with you if I build these in stainless? And he's like, you want me to mail you the pattern? And I was
Wow.
like, no. I was like, I want to make my own pattern on it. He's like, I was like, I promise I won't make them in mild, but I just don't want to step on your toes. And, he was like, oh, that's all cool. So I spent literally like a year. I can't tell you how many of these I threw in the scrap bin. I would make practice ones in mild steel, and they would like go so easily, and then in stainless, same pattern, wouldn't go together at all. And I realized that it was because in the mild, I'm actually using my hands and I'm manipulating the metal and like with little hammer taps, and it would just go together. Whereas the stainless is just like, no, I'm gonna spring back to the shape. And so this is like one of the helmets where like every size has to have a different modification to the pattern to get the plates to, because I want things to have a certain symmetry to them.
Yeah.
And so I have 2 more of these on my workbench because I'm still trying to dial the pattern in on it, and that I'm just making for inventory. But I might keep one for myself. I did make one of my size, but and this is also an example of like where I was working on different, alternatives to bar grills. But since I don't have like a laser cutter here or anything like that, and I don't know how to use AutoCAD, the plan I came up with was to come up with designs that I can get a dozen sets cut at once, which lowers the cost on the laser cutting, and then I get them shipped here, and then I sit down and I do the chasing and I file work, Dremel work to like give them organic feel and a shape to them and stuff. I have a new Raven one that I teamed up with Sir Magnus Richard from Dark Horse Leather.
Mm-hmm.
He just made me a beautiful Raven faceplate. It's like we did a trade. I built him some armor, so he's doing some artwork for me. I can't wait to get him cut. But so yeah, this is totally not. There's nothing historically accurate about this helmet top, like at all. It's in my shop we refer to them as D&D helmets.
But they're super cool.
They're super cool though, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So this is something new that I've been experimenting with. There's a buddy of mine named Kevin Potter. He owns a company called Potter USA in Tucson, and they specialize in stamping dies. And that's what it's resting against. So he's got like these huge presses, and he's been rescuing these turn of the century and like, from like the 18th century and 19th century and a little early 20th century, like these dies from these jewelry companies that are defunct. Like everybody's, nobody is making this stuff anymore. Like he goes over to Europe and literally buys like 100 tons of dies and has them shipped to Tucson, and he has to go through them. And then when they find some that are really good, what he does is he takes the master die is a relief like this medallion is. And you take the master die and you heat up a metal puck and you put it in like a 200-ton hydraulic press, and you press the master and you make an indented version of it. And so then what you do with this is you take your material and you put it on top of the indented version, and then you take like some, like I use like some rubber, and you press the rubber with a hydraulic press into the soft brass, and it presses that design down inside of it. And then you do it, and then it comes out, and then you have this design like in relief in the material. And it's how like, have you ever seen like, those really cool like silver mirrors that have all that relief on the back of it? Like those are all stamped.
Yeah.
Like, he's got like ring bands. Like it's crazy the stuff he's got. And I saw this and I was like, this would be really cool to get for the shop, and like maybe I could sell these to, like as a item, like if someone wants to decorate like some Roman armor with like these little Medusa heads, like on like tassets hanging down and things like that, And I could trim it. You could trim it all the way down. You could make a button. You could solder a hook onto the back, a loop, and make a button out of these too. And
how far across is
really
the image?
What?
How far across is the
The image is, I think it's like an inch. It's about an inch, so it's sizable.
Nice.
Might be a little bit bigger. I actually might use it on a helmet, on the
Yeah.
centerpiece on a helmet for this guy. A helmet replica kind of from Ben-Hur. And like next to it, there's like a sun.
Mm-hmm.
And like I bought a sun one day and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm making this cornet for Angela with these bees in it. And then I have a stamp that does the bees. And then I was going to do like her heraldry as a bee, and then I was going to do a sun and then a bee. And then like a week later, he puts out this other die that looks just like the Atenveldt sun. And so I was
Wow.
like, oh my God, it's another like, chunk of change. So I bought that one. And these are all just like me practicing, I'm still trying to figure out, like, I mean, it took me 20 minutes to press that out.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that long.
Mm-mm.
I'm just not good at it yet. I had to like, soften the brass, press it in a couple times, and soften the brass again, and then finish, and then get it back lined up and pressed. And so this is a Volsgard 8 style top. This is like I took that top from there's a book called The Anglican Finds at Coppergate. It's mostly a book on the Coppergate dig, but then it gets into like these other Norse helms. They're like, they're pre-Viking helmets. All these helmets like this. There's only a couple of actual real Viking helmets, and they don't really look that great. So like this helmet originally, this is what it looked like underneath all these press blacks that were all over the helmet. It was covered in like these really thin, pressed out, like gold foils of like these characters that were all over it. And this is what the helmet looked like underneath, And I imagine the reason why it's built with all these multiple panels is because, in the 9th century or the 8th century, I think this is from, actually might be before that. You just didn't have metal like that. You didn't have like sheets of metal. So you kind of build out with what you get. Right. And it makes sense. So I basically took the line drawings from the digs of the helmets that they found. And so like when I build these for customers, I'm like, this is Volsgard 8 style top because it doesn't have all the foil stamping. And in the SCA, if you put all that on there, man, the helmet would weigh like 25 pounds.
Yeah.
Because it has to be so thick. You can't do. Vren's done a couple of really, really nice ones where he's only done like some of the pieces, and so. And then like the crest and the dragon head, I fabricate all those from like chunks of brass right now. It drives me nuts. And this is the same style helmet. It's just this one, I decided to texture the top on it. And I did the faceplate is actually a Thor's hammer. So when you put the two pieces, because the faceplate's made out of two halves. So when you put it together, it makes like one Thor's hammer in the middle. And I started like experimenting with like different texturing and like putting the antiquing solution on and then like burnishing it off with like a green scrubby to create like highs and lows and shadows on and stuff on it to kind of give the pieces like different depths, which is something I'm really like kind of enjoying right now actually.
It looks great.
So these are some spurs I actually made as a gift for somebody, and he's doing a Polish. I actually don't even know him. He's doing a Polish persona, and years ago he bought my first Polish breastplate I ever built. Like I built it. I think I just figured it out. I built it like 18 years ago, I think.
Wow.
And they sent it to me. I think it's his wife Raven sent it to me earlier this year, and then I told her it was going to be done quicker than it ended up being. But I had to replace all these rosettes on it, and then he had been getting hit so much, like there's a crease in the front of the metal that had been like opened and shut, like where they were reshaping it. It cracked, so I welded all that back up, and I think it's cool that he's doing a Polish persona, so I made him some spurs to kind of go with it, and these are based off of a design that is in a book called Husaria Polska, which is like probably like the like motherlode of like Polish Hussar armor. Like it's all in Polish, the whole book, but the pictures are in English, so we still get to look at them. And so I have a set of these I made for myself, and they're really loud. So the stems are hollow. They're made out of stainless, and then I work hard in the brass spurs, the rowels on them, so they're super loud. Like if you're walking, like when I got my laureling ceremony, since it was my second peerage, I didn't have like a really big procession. I just walked into the big area at Australia War. Those spurs like clicked off the concrete, and everybody was like quiet, and it was so loud. Like I was like, oh my god, like this is really loud, and I was trying not to laugh. But yeah, so I made those as a surprise gift for him, and she says he really likes them. So I look, I want to get up to Ontario for an event and meet a bunch of people that I've done so much stuff for up there. But
Well, we're starting planning on Sport of Kings, and I
my buddy Nader just asked me if I wanted to go to Sport of Kings, and I was like, dude, if Pinzik happens, it might be too close to Pinzik for me.
Well, it would be, it's all fighting, so it might be a good merchant event. I don't know.
Right, and my dad lives in Vancouver.
Oh, well, so do I.
Right, so I got to go up there and pick up some furniture from him and stuff. But so this is like a home style that I've been building kind of for a while. I call it my Sporty Norris. So it's a stainless steel like 13 gauge smooth top, and so it has like all the glancing surfaces that people think that they might need and stuff like that. There's absolutely nothing historically correct about it, but people love them. And this is actually like the coolest crest I've ever made. Like I took a big chunk of brass and I used like a cutting wheel and different grinders and files to put like the dragon scales down it. And then I took another chunk of brass and I filed and used different angles on my belt sander and different things to like do the lines in it and stuff, like the scaly part of the nose. And I was so happy with that part. I was so happy with the way this came out. Like I contacted the customer, who happens to be this guy that's in Tucson. I told you there was a new guy that came to the shop earlier this summer. So this is like his helmet for his new, like a new guy going in the SCA. Like this is his helmet, But I was like, dude, do you have a problem if I hold on to this for like another week? And because the crest hadn't been mounted, because I was like, I want to go to Phoenix and get some stuff. I want to take a mold off of it. Because like I don't want to have to make this again. I want to cast it. I've been collecting casting equipment, and I have a friend of mine in Kingdom that's starting a casting company. And so I've been trying to help him, and I've given him some stuff for casting, some molds I have. And I'm like, I want to just start casting this stuff because like I don't charge enough for what it takes for me to make that.
Right.
But
and you could interchange different cast pieces.
Yeah, and I could do different like heads. I could be like, oh, do you want a head on the front, head on the back, like all this stuff. I want to start casting the eyebrows, and things like that. But yeah, and he was like cool with me doing that, but I could hear a little disappointment in his voice because he was getting something completely unique. And I was like, all right, dude, it's cool. You can do it. And I was like, I'll just get like maybe a chunk of aluminum and do another one out of aluminum, or maybe I'll actually try and use wax and just do that. And I could change it so it's a little different. This is something that I've been working on. This is not for a customer. This is a stock helmet. I wanted to practice like my chasing and like texturing, and so I did up these copper bands. I just did the top band recently. I've been working on this helmet all year. This will be like one of those helmets that I'll get finished and be like at an event and be like, this has got new stuff that I've been working on, new techniques. The back of it's like the first time I've ever done a back that way, and stuff like that. But it's a D&D helmet. It's like a Celtic Roman style helmet, and this funny thing about this photo is it's taken on our kitchen counter, and it's not often that I do something and I take it into the house and show my wife anymore. Like, it used to be like all the time, like when I was living in one place and the shop was in another place, like, or even when I was at Windrose, like I would bring stuff home and show her because I was super duper excited about it. So now I only bring her the stuff when I've impressed myself, I guess, or when I'm like,
it's a new thing. I'm excited.
Yeah, check it out. Because I did this and I was like, oh, maybe I'll make you like a bracelet or something if you want. I can like engrave you a bracelet.
Oh, cool.
or something like that. But like, and in the process of doing this, I'm like, no one's ever ordered anything like this because I don't think that they've never seen me do it, so it doesn't cross their minds. But
Right.
in the process of doing it, I'm like, I'm not sure I want anybody to order this because it just cramps my hands up so bad. And I'm like, I could pay art to acid etch this,
Yep.
and I could put an acid etch one on there, but it doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
It looks like it was acid etch, like on a computer, where this is like way more. This has mistakes in it, and stuff like that. So yeah, this is a super old Crusader helmet I made for a guy. This has got to be like 2012 maybe.
Yeah. I
Right
think
when
I think it's 2011. I went
2011,
I
like
went
right when I
way
started
back.
my company. Yeah, it's in the way back. Right when I
Sorry.
started my company. I don't think the guy even fights anymore. Maybe he sold it. But yeah, this is like an example of like a spoon fluted top, and it was interesting. Like for a while there, even when I was at Windrose, like that was like my trademark, like a fluted helmet top. Like I would just do so many of them, and I would get so good at it, at putting them in, different thicknesses of helmets and stuff like that. And I had all these different hammers that I shaped up, and I made these different stakes to speed the process up. Now I'm at the point where I have other tooling that I've done that like eases up a lot of the torment on my body. Because when I would do something like this, I would have to do both halves the same day.
Mm.
I found out because if I did one half like on a Monday and the other half on a Tuesday, they wouldn't be the same depth. There would be something different about them. Or like on like on some of the Roman helmets where they have the eyebrows top. Like if I did, there's been times where I did one on one day and then did the other one the next day, and I did two lefts. I was like, oh Jesus. Because I just wasn't paying attention. I just went out. I was like, oh, I got to draw the other one in and do it, and then I didn't check. So now I'm in the thing where I have a process. This is a whole long time ago. I think this is before I was a squire. So like I'm on the right. Merrick is 2 over from me, and then
And you
Kyle,
built this armor.
I built all those plates. I built the shoulders, I bought the gorget, and I bought the leg armor.
Mm-hmm.
But I built everything else, and like I taped a T-shirt onto myself, and then I cut it off, and like while I was watching Braveheart, I made that. Like I cut in the living room of our condo with a jigsaw on the carpet while Angie was at work. Cut all those things out, and then I brought a drill press into the house, and I drilled all those holes while I was watching TV over the course of a couple nights. But like the shoulder armor, that's one of the things I built like with a bowling ball. Like it's aluminum, but I instead of dishing it, I was raising it over the bowling ball because I didn't know that you could dish armor. And
Amazing.
then a little later, I got like the leg armor. And actually, that leg armor is funny because I was fixing it, and I was like, I got to drill this out, and I left the leg armor on. So then I drilled out the rivet into my leg, like so deep I had to put the drill in reverse to get it out, and like I had my pants all caught up. Yeah, and stuff. So, yeah. And that's the guy in the middle is Kyle. He was the head of the household. And his wife does like a lot of steampunk stuff now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. This is a helmet that I built for myself, which I promptly sold to my squire at the time, who's not in the SCA anymore. But the brass pieces
Oh, I'll go
that
back.
are on it are super cool because I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Kirby Wise and Lori Wise, but like they've been in the SCA since like its inception. And Kirby actually has been in the SCA so long, he has 2 Laurels. He got laureled in Atenveldt and like I think in the West Kingdom or something like that.
Wow.
But so his wife does like he's a swordsmith, and they do all these crazy like the pierce work pieces. Like they do all their Viking swords. They have all this like pieces all over their weapons and stuff like that. So I talk to them all the time. I just talked to him on Saturday, and so they'll make me like these cool pierce work pieces for me, and and I like to put them on different stuff. It's kind of cool. Like in Atenveldt, all the older people, older generation, like before my time, it was like huge. I have a huge collection of Kirby swords. It's stupid, but like he made my wife's sword that she uses for belly dancing. Like she went out to his shop and she watched him forge the whole blade out. Like the first try, it was perfectly balanced and nice curve in it and everything.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a cool helmet. So this is actually one of those helmets that I made and took to Australia War as like it's got stuff in it that I've never done before. Like I've never built like some of the things in this helmet, and it had like I put brass plates in the top and acid etched like crosses in it. It had a titanium drape on it. It was expensive. It was like $2,500. But yeah, it was the first timer for that one.
I love
The
all of
one
it.
next to it is actually a first time. Like that was Alfred, this guy Alfred of Carlisle, ordered a helmet like that, and I built it, and I named the pattern after him because that's I built it. He was the first one, and I was never really a huge fan of that style helmet. Like I have AutoCAD files to laser cut those and sell them as kits because I bought out my first armory I ever bought out was Zweihammer Armory from Eric. I bought all of his business. I bought all of his old stock. I bought all of his patterns. But then I built this for uh, Alfred based on some designs he gave me, and I liked it so much that I named the pattern after him.
Awesome.
This is another hammered top I did for somebody in Alaska, I think. Wait a second. Yeah, I was just thinking it might be sitting here on the floor because I just bought it back from somebody, but it was a different one. But that's the first hammered top helmet I believe I ever did. And the first Thor's hammer visor I ever did. This is a cool D&D helmet, right? Because there's no Crusader helmets that are pierced like that.
Right.
But I was getting a little creative with all this like different laser cutting options, and my friend Ismania, she I'll draw this stuff up all on paper patterns, and then she redraws them for me in Adobe Illustrator, and then converts them to like a DWG file, so then I can get them laser cut. So this was like the first one of these I ever did, and I haven't done too many, but yeah, it was totally cool. Took it to its first event, and it was like gone. I think it sold. No, this was one of the ones I sold before, and then I asked them if I could take it. This is my old shop. This is like a cool lineup of us getting ready for Australia War. The cool thing is the helmet on the right, that nasal, Chris Gilman had built this helmet for like a reenactment type stuff in Europe, and it was immaculate. But he wanted to do something different on the nasal, and he had brought the helmet into my booth at a Gulf War or a Great Western War one year, and I was like, dude, I love this nasal. And he's like, dude, you should totally copy it and make it and use it in your shop. And I was like, can I get that in writing? I got home and he'd sent me a Facebook message with a bunch of pictures of it, like up close. And so I kind of changed. No, maybe I didn't change anything on it. I think I kept it pretty true to this thing. But yeah, it's cool when other people do that. I've done stuff like that and it's awesome. But yeah. That's that particular helmet finished up. This is like more like production type stuff, like I think, except for the one in the Crusader helmet. But I think the others are all like probably inventory items. Actually, no. So the bassinet is my very first clap visor bassinet I ever made. I never built one before, and this guy Simon ended up buying it. He bought it. He ordered it, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then he used it in the ACL before it became the ACL. It was first called the Battle of Nations. And so the first year the United States went over there, he took that over there and he fought in it. And like the helmet is destroyed. And he kept using it and kept bringing it in like for years. And I just retired it like maybe 3 years ago. finally. Like I told him I wouldn't fix it anymore. But yeah, so
At a certain
that's actually
point,
really cool, and he still has it. I tried to get it back from him. I was like, dude, I'll build you a new one. This is a cool helmet. So this is a Italian Bellows visor, Soleil, and I was always infatuated with this helmet. And normally when you see pictures of it, it's like completely only from the side, like a profile shot. And I actually emailed the Wallace collection, and they sent me, I think it was the Wallace collection, they sent me photos of the inside of it, and like from head on with the visor lifted up.
wow.
So I could see like if I could kind of try and get, and I made a couple of little changes to like the brow reinforce from the original, just for like artistic reasons, because I actually was building this for myself. And then as things happen, I sold it. Yeah, this is from a Crown tournament. I don't even know when that was from, but we're waiting to do our introductions. I look way too serious. Angie, so this is the funny thing about Angie. Like, she's always got a smile. Like the first time I finaled in Crown tournament, like there's these photos of her, and it was a three-way final, and there's like photos of her and the two other ladies, the two other consorts, and they're all like with the crown and everything, and everybody's got, and we're getting ready to do the first fight, and someone had taken a picture, and everybody's got like this deadpan serious face on it except for her, like this huge giant smile, and I just remember looking over and I was like, that's an awesome smile. I didn't,
She has the best smile.
right, but yeah, it's always like that. Yeah, there's more smile, right? This is one of our
I got a little excited about pictures of the two of you because you're so cute.
This is so funny. Like we both agreed to wear white to this event too, or like or cream, and then they were doing photos, and she's like, "Let's go do homecoming photos." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," and stuff. Yeah, and then Marlene actually made these outfits from Kaid. She's a fabulous seamstress.
They're amazing.
So, yeah, and she made the dress for herself, and then there was something that I think she made it too long or something, but it fit Angie really well. And then she custom made my outfit for me. She has it back. I had to send it back to her because I lost weight. And this is from a Crown tournament too. I'm actually fighting. That shield's so funny. I'm working on getting that passed as a badge, and I decided to paint that on a shield because there was like I was just detecting so much seriousness all the time from some people, like a lot of people, like just in general at SCA events and fighting events, that I wanted to like go out on the field and maybe with a little cheer, as we would say.
A little levity.
Yeah, a little levity, but yeah. And so I'm actually, and Countess Mariana made the coat that I'm fighting in. It's from one of the groups I'm involved with, the Knights of St. Michael, and that's like the heraldry, and she did all that on it. And
very cool.
Decided to fight in it that day, which I normally wouldn't have done. But
my sister and I try to add a lot of levity too. I got some bedazzled sparkly things and bedazzled the butt of my husband's fighting pants.
Right? Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Right. This is a cool photo too because we're the non-belted fighters are picking their challenges for the first round of Crown, and it's really cool because one, that's Duke Matthias's chain that he won both of his Crown tournaments in, that he gave me before he lost his leg and stuff, and it doesn't normally show up in photos that often, so it was really cool to see that. And then the other thing is Demetrius is in the photo to my left on the screen, and he's my squire brother. He was squire to Tiernan, and it's cool to he's knighted now, and it's cool to, was he knighted then? He might have been knighted then. I can't remember, but it's cool just to see how far he's come.
Yeah.
And now we're all part of the same camp. Stuff.
Very cool.
Which is nice. Yeah, more Crown tournament. I don't even know what I'm doing.
I like your.
No, I promised my wife I would be out in the 4th round. She got yelled at that tournament too. This is funny. So I was working on a stock helmet for Australia War. This is like the first one of these helmets I ever built, the clinker style. And I had this faceplate design. I drew this out, and I haven't yet to put it in a helmet. I only ever cut one because my wife's heraldry is an octopus, and so I was looking at this helmet that I was working on. I was like, this is kind of funny because the helmet is a boat hull. So I was like, what if I build one of these for myself and I use the octopus faceplate and then I make an octopus nasal? And so I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to. I just haven't. So this is me like kind of flushing it out, the idea.
Noodling out the idea.
You know, and then locking
That
it in.
manila folder paper.
Yeah.
I use
Yeah,
that.
it's like, oh my God, it's like a godsend. So this is something that I did during the shutdown. I had some metal and I just started cutting out parts for helmets that I want to build. That's all like for inventory helmets that I want to build. Different pattern pieces. That down the bottom, I'm going to build. Years ago, I came up with this idea to make a Hamza helmet, like a Spangen helmet with Hamza hands all the way around it. And I've sold a couple of them. And now I've been experimenting with acid etching metal using like a car battery charger and like salt water.
Oh, cool.
So I've been drawing up, it's actually sitting right here. I've been drawing up like this pattern and I wanted to acid etch all this like kind of designs that would be like on a Hamza into the stainless steel plates and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's all like future inventory.
I love production line stuff. I, in the last 5 years, have worked 2 sewing jobs where I've kind of learned production line stuff and then making masks. And it's so different, but it's really cool how much time you can save by doing stuff like this.
Right. Yeah. So this is a cool helmet. So I built a helmet, this one right here, it's almost the same.
Sorry.
I built that helmet because a lady in Scotland saw my helmet and she's like, I want one just like it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to build a helmet just like mine. So I kind of changed it up a little bit. And like my back doesn't have brass on the decorations on it, and I did a different crest and stuff, but hopefully she fights in it. I haven't seen any pictures of her in it yet though. But she actually flew out here to visit her mom in Scottsdale. So when it was done, I got to hand deliver it to her.
Oh, nice.
And then she didn't have to pay, like tariffs and stuff to take it back.
Crazy shipping.
This is an awesome picture. So me and Brian were Squire brothers. He was Squire to Tiernan, and Count Brian, and that's Countess Mania. She's the one that helps me out with some of my artwork. She also likes to help me out with my accounting, or maybe not likes to help me, but somehow I volunteer to help me out with some of my accounting stuff, and I got to do that. But we were in Great Western War, and I had just woken up, and Brian was wandering through my camp, and I was like, "Dude, you're wearing a gown? I'm wearing a gown. I got like one of my wife's dresses on too." So
that's awesome.
This is like an old. This is I can actually honestly say this is a direct result of me joining the SCA and taking the household of Schadenfreude to a different level. They would never, when I joined, no one in the group dressed like this. No one in the group had armor like this. There was no presentation like this. There was duct tape and plastic everywhere. And, the guy in the front center with the dark hair and the breastplate on, he was like my first squire. And then had a baby and things like that, and had to change his job up and do some stuff. So he hasn't been able to really participate. But after I got knighted, I took him as my first squire. The guy next to him is Thor. He's actually my very first apprentice. And stuff. So, but all the shiny armor and stuff is like pretty much a direct result. Actually, the guy with the black hoodie on is fighting in the very first helmet I ever bought. I bought it from Ashcraft in a 7-Eleven parking lot. But that's an Australia War where we were like the hardcore fighters of the household, and the rest of the guys would show up after the first or second battle.
Awesome.
This is a super duper cool helmet. So the faceplate is actually based off like an actual Byzantine, um, like hanging. I don't know what you call it. It's like a hanging thing with chains. So it's actually like large-ish.
Hmm.
And I think they like put candles or something on it. I don't know. But I had a customer that wanted a Byzantine helmet, not this particular helmet, but and we were going over different artwork ideas. So she sent me some images of this, and I was like, "That's wicked intense."
That's beautiful.
And the funny thing is, I should have pulled them out. The funny thing is we drew everything. I drew everything up by hand. Ismania digitized all of it for me. At this point in time, she had never made a mistake. So she sent me the email file, and I sent it to the laser cutter without opening it.
Mm.
They sent me 6 of these faceplates, and they were 27 inches tall.
Oh my.
And yeah, it was an expensive mistake.
Oh.
So it took us like 3 months to figure out what she did wrong, and because none of us really know what we're doing. And so we
Right.
figured it out. And so then I ordered some more, and I had extras done to keep the cost down to the customer. And so then I put this helmet together, and was like, oh, this faceplate will look cool in here. And when I originally built it, I put a chainmail drape on it, and then the guy that bought it doesn't like chainmail drapes, so I swapped it out for a leather drape, and that's why it's the same helmet but with 2 different things.
Mm.
But and also
Oh,
the original customer that got the original helmet,
mm-hmm.
I took one of I sent her some of the giant ones. I cut them out, like the circles and stuff. I think they cut them out, or maybe I might have just sent her the whole thing. It's like maybe you can do something cool with this, like cut them out and like maybe fill them with some like that stained glass type stuff or like some resin and like hang it up so the light comes through it or
Right.
something.
Or even put it as a panel in your tent or something.
Yeah, like something cool, like put it on a standard and hang it up. Like I still have these on the website. I have a matching pair of knees and elbows. So every now and then I get like a wild hair to do something like some embossing or something like that. So because some of this stuff, like these are a little sloppy, I can even see it. I got a little frustrated because I hadn't done it in so long that the technique was getting rusty.
Mm.
So
Gotta
something I
practice.
need to do, keep up with, because no one really ever orders that type of stuff. But it's something I need to keep in my quiver. It's my first Gladiator helmet.
Super
I
cool.
think it's an Antier. I'm pretty sure. I think that's where I mailed it to. This dude, man, was so patient. Like, he bought a helmet from me off the shelf, and it didn't just fit. It didn't. It was too small by like an inch and a half.
Ugh.
Like I don't know what he was thinking, but so then he actually was in San Diego for something, and he came to my shop, and then so he had bought a 16th century clothes helm, and so I was going to build him a new one, and then I started it, and then he was like, "Hey, can I get a gladiator visor on it?" And I was like, "You want me to take like a 16th century like German clothes helm and put a gladiator visor on it?" And then he's like, "Yeah," and it killed the project. Like talk about like I couldn't like even wrap my head around how I wanted to do it, and like I mocked up a couple of like 18 gauge visors. I'd never built a gladiator helmet before, and it just never was coming out right. Never was coming out right. And like he was getting, I was like, dude, I'm trying to figure this out. Like I'm trying to do what you want. I'm trying to make this right. And then finally, I was like, look, dude, how about I just make you an awesome ass gladiator helmet? Like, isn't that what you want? Like he was like, well, I just want. I was like, what do you like? Why do you want the 16th century helmet? And he's like, because I want the neck lame in the back to go up and down. And I was like, oh shit. So when I built this, I just made the tail on the back on pivots. So it pivots on slots. So it pivots up and down and did everything you need to do. I wish he would have told me that, or I would have asked that question in the beginning, because it took me like 2.5 years to get this out to him. But the upside to it was in the process of the 2.5 years, I had learned a lot of things. And I think he ultimately got a lot better helmet than he would have gotten. One, if I put a gladiator helmet on a closed helmet, and 2, like just in general, like my skill level gotten better.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Very cool. All right. I cannot work this now suddenly. Okay. There.
This is a super duper cool day for me and also for Rowan, because he got offered his Pelican, and this is when I was releasing him, and as being my squire, and my apprentice Thor is behind him actually. But so I was pretty proud of him, all the work he had put in, and it was cool too that Merrick was the one that offered him, because me and him just have like a lot of history, like in the SCA and outside the SCA. We used to go on vacations all the time. I think the first time I went to Cancun was with him, and stuff. But we used to do all kinds of things together all the time. This was another super duper cool day for me, because Angie got offered her laurel for Middle Eastern dance, and it's a hard subject because I think that she should have gotten her laurel before I got mine. But it was just so hard because of the way the Laurels look at belly dancing and like the time period of all of it, and also in the process of the circle, a lot of those people don't go out to those parties where that stuff is going on at night, or they don't pay attention to the fact that she's been teaching classes, at events all the time, and then on top of that, I mean, she's belly danced in Dubai, she's belly danced all over the world, and only took almost 20 years, but and then of course she gets it and she's trying to figure things out, and then we have the shutdown, so she's only been a laurel. I think now is her 2-year anniversary just happened. But yeah, it was funny too because when they called her into court, she was in the back of the hall sword fighting with giant zucchinis and stuff. But yeah.
Perfect.
And she was apprenticed to Duke Aaron, who was the guy that knighted me, so that was even cool.
Aw.
So this is the bee I was mentioning earlier. So doing this for Mistress Angela. She's super, like, really good seamstress. We all camped together, and I was like, hey, I want you to make me some wizard's robes. And like, so she even carved out like a Conan the Barbarian block print to like print on the wizard's robes.
Awesome.
And so I was like, I'll make you some cool stuff. So I was like talking to her boyfriend, Thomas, and I was like, dude, I want to put like her heraldry into this stuff. And I was like, I guess I can figure out how to like acid etch a bee into this cornet. And I'm like, and then, I saw this bee impression die, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then, when the killer bee thing was happening at the same time, like the Japanese, and so it's fairly large. I mean, like I have it right here. So like for like a finger reference, like.
Oh yeah, that's big.
And so I took several attempts and I stamped the bee in there, and then I'm still working on my repoussé skills. I'm not really good at it. I'm definitely not an Ugo. But so then I just threw it in a pitch pot, and I repoussé in like a laurel wreath on it, and I did this at first as a practice piece to see how the stamp would work, so I could put it in the cornet, and then it came out so good. I was like, I'm gonna make these for her as the Laurels medallion. And then the crazy thing is like I get contacted from Yellowstone Beekeepers Association, like wants me to stamp out a bunch of medallions for them with the bees on it and stuff. It's kind of fun. I haven't done it yet, but so yeah, we're at court. This is actually the same event where Angie got offered, or Iona got offered a laurel, but this is an baronial investiture we were at when Ivan and Yannick were crowned, and I got to hold the sword. It was fun. I like doing that. That's Fergus's helmet, all copper, twisted copper on the top. That was a pain in the ass.
Right, and we're almost at, I think we're like at 2.5 hours now.
Oh wow!
So, I know we've been chatting a lot. So I'm just gonna kind of power through some of these old pictures.
Sound tournament, yeah. It's a lion of Atenveldt. Yeah, the first one. Back to the beginning.
Yay!
Sorry, I can talk a lot. I don't get much visitors out here.
I understand. There's a reason why I'm doing these interviews.
Right. Well, even before the lockdown, we live so far. In Atenveldt, if you have to drive 15 minutes, that's too far.
Yeah.
It's 40, and I'm 45 minutes.
Oh, that's too far, man. But now you have Zoom, you can talk to people. So
Right.
is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to cover?
No, I actually wasn't really 100% sure, like how it was all going to go, and I wasn't sure what I was going to say either.
Okay.
Unscripted and stuff, which is great. No, I think we covered a lot of things. I think I probably rambled more than I needed to on
But it was
stuff,
interesting.
you
I
know.
think you did good.
But I think we covered pretty much a lot of the stuff. It's a crazy wild ride, and I'm hoping that when things open back up, like some of the drama that's been going on in the SCA will get shelved for a lot of people. I'm not a huge fan. Like I like stuff like this, and I like the online Facebook forums for like learning how to make stuff and everything. But I'm not a big fan of like the ESCA, like the online live events. We've had people get offered like
Hmm.
online for a peerage, and I'm just like, like I'm just, this is not. I didn't join the SCA to be on a computer for an event, right?
Yeah. I
But
I I have mixed feelings about it because in our kingdom we aren't doing court at all. And so everything's, I mean, we're not talking about candidates and people are making cool shit right now. And
right,
we
right,
should be
yeah,
recognizing that and we should be um, keeping the enthusiasm for people going.
right.
And that's not happening for us. And
Our
I
Crown's been doing stuff for it. Like I know
yeah,
that they put up like, hey, she's like, hey, we're gonna, you know, put up something, these different categories that people are gonna vote on it, and then, so they've been trying to keep like, especially the artisans, like, because everybody has like this kind of free time, and
yep.
I've had several people. Like I have a guy who is a up and coming like card weaver in the kingdom, and he's gonna start hardsuit fighting, and he can't, really afford very much of a helmet. And I was like, well, dude, you're trying to learn how to make art, so he's gonna come up, I think, next month for a couple weekends, and I'm gonna teach him how to make a Spangen helmet and all that
Awesome.
kind of stuff. And he's like, what's that gonna cost me? I'm like, oh, maybe you can weave me a belt one day, or something. I'm like, I'm like, I want you to get your hands dirty. I'm like, so bring some band-aids. Stuff. But and I told him like it's good. It's good for your repertoire. I'm like, I know that your thing is the weaving and stuff, but when push comes to shove, people want to see some diversity as well.
Yeah,
You know,
breadth is a good thing.
and
Definitely.
stuff. So like,
Well, thank you so
yeah, no,
much
it's
for all
awesome,
of your time.
right? No, I'm gonna go back to work. So,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, thank you
What
very
time is
much.
it? 8:30?
And
I don't know. I think my wife might want to watch True Blood or True Blood marathon. But no, it was awesome. I really appreciate it. I was surprised to get asked to do it. So it was a shock and a highlight.
well, I was really happy that you said yes. So thank you.
No, it was cool. So
Um, yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I guess we'll call it a night.
right. What was cool is I didn't say any swear words, did I?
You didn't. I did, but you didn't. You were clean. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.